News channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're not hearing. Good morning. 6 o'clock, Tuesday, 10th of October. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel on this Tuesday morning.
Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has warned that enormous force will be used against Hamas as the bombing of Gaza continues overnight. Israel has ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, cutting off food, fuel, electricity and water supplies.
In the UK, 3 people have been arrested during pro-Palestinian protests outside the Israeli embassy in London. The Home Secretary has asked for more police patrols to protect Jewish communities throughout England and Wales. Rishi Sunak says the UK is poised to offer Israel military help, if required.
In other news, Keir Starmer set to deliver his keynote speech at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Our Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood is there.
A decade of national renewal. That's what the Labour leader is going to promise at 2 p.m. this afternoon. But is a decade in power presumptuous? And indeed, how will this be delivered? What will the Labour leader say on housing? I'll have the latest.
And Greg Dewhurst will have the latest when it comes to the forecast.
Hello there, good morning. We've got some heavy rain, Met Office warnings in force across western parts of Scotland today. Brighter skies eventually further south. Find out all the details coming up in the programme.
We are very grateful for your company this morning right through until 9:30. And you can join in any discussions. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com or you can tweet at GBNews.
Well, to our top story this morning, and Israel has imposed a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. No power, no food, no gas. Everything is closed, was the message from the Israeli Defence Minister. In response, Hamas has threatened to start killing civilian hostages if Israel continues to bomb Gaza.
Death toll continues to rise on both sides. About 900 people have died in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack, including 260 people who were killed by Hamas gunmen at that peace music festival.
Well, since Israel began striking Gaza in response, almost 690 people have died on the Palestinian side.
The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, the UK and the United States have released a joint statement expressing their, quote, steadfast and united support to the state of Israel.
And last night, the Palace of Westminster was lit up in colours of the Israeli flag. More than 10 Britons are believed to be dead or missing in Israel, but the Foreign Secretary says he won't speculate on the number of British nationals involved.
The Prime Minister says that the UK is working closely with Israel to locate and bring any British nationals to safety.
It will be an anxious time for many families who have loved ones in the region. It's a quite complex situation on the ground, so we are working very closely with our Israeli counterparts to establish the status of any British nationals on the ground. That work is underway as we speak. But for anyone who does have family or friends in the region, the most important thing for them to do is follow the Foreign Office advice, but also the advice of the Israeli Home Command.
Tensions remain high as demonstrations break out right across the world.
And pro-Israel rallies have been held in the streets of Chile, as you can see on your screens here, as well as in Paris and Brussels and Colombia.
There have also been pro-Palestinian protests in New York, Buenos Aires and London. The Metropolitan Police are reporting hate crimes against the Jewish community.
Well, speaking last night at the United Synagogue in London, Rishi Sunak said attempts to stir up community tensions will not be tolerated in modern Britain.
I know that at moments like this, when the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain, not in our country, not in this century.
But there are tensions right around the world. Here to discuss those, Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. How volatile is all of this in terms of the rest of the world?
Very. Just to pick out one of the capitals there, Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires has a considerable Jewish community, and we have just heard on your roundup there are pro-Palestinian demonstrations. There are interfaces, and I think that where the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is right to warn about this. Very strong pro-Palestinian movement in the student population, and it could be real trouble. And that's why it's very interesting that the big leaders of Europe, including the UK, have got together and said, look, we must defend the right of the Israeli people for self-defense. And this is what it's about. It's almost that the human rights industry at one end has looked at the pro-Palestinian thing, the grievances of the Palestinian population, and they haven't been treated well. That must be said. But in no way do I want to share things out, given the atrocities that occurred over the weekend. But, Eamonn and Isabel, it is very difficult as an analyst, as a reporter who's reported from these places, to stand in the middle ground on this one. We are looking at something that, sociologists describe as a wicked problem, a problem with no obvious solution. The problem of the impacted Palestinian populations, their continuing resentment, and the Israelis who have come and settled this land, whose independence as a state was guaranteed from 1948 on.
How do those Palestinians end up in Gaza? We'll see a map here of where Gaza is, and this tiny bit of land with a population of 2 million. 2.3,
and it's going up.
There
when I started working there, it was under 500,000.
But why do people choose to be there?
Not really. It's necessity. It has always been very particular. It's very particular if you go back to the Old Testament and the Bible. Goliath, I think, came from Gaza, and they're always seen as somewhat different. And it has always been a hot potato since the wars of Israeli independence began in 47-48, that Israel, after the 67 war, wanted to share it out with Egypt. One of the founders of Israel said that it's almost like the other side of the moon. It is so difficult. One thing that we must stress, given that they're talking about a state of siege, it's in a more or less a state of siege anyway. Environmentally, it's extremely challenged. The natural sources of fresh water have been running out. Sewage has been regularly in the streets. And the people who expressed greater sympathy to me recently being there, I mean, it's about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, was in one of those very kibbutz opposite. They were aware of what's going on and had a lot of sympathy. But now, how you've got this absolutely toxic mix of this completely unexpected commando attack on the Israeli people, as it turned out.
It's interesting you talk about the reaction around the world, and just to give this a kind of GB focus, we were hearing yesterday from the chief rabbi in the UK saying it's hard to find find a Jewish family in this country that haven't been touched by this tragedy, this massacre. We hear about people being burned to death in kibbutzes in parts of Israel over the weekend. But the reaction was very strong from Palestinian supporters, people who were out on the streets last night outside the Israeli embassy, the likes of which I don't think I've ever seen in this country.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think it goes on from what I was saying, that it's a cycle of revenge and retribution, and this is why it is absolutely going nowhere. We look at the Telegraph headline, Israel, no choice but to seize Gaza. Actually, even given the size, Israel itself is a relatively small country. It's very interesting.
Size of Wales.
I've just had a correspondence on WhatsApp with a good friend there in journalism, and he was saying, no, my family is safe. But we know 5 families that have lost loved ones or have had loved ones kidnapped. It is so small. It is so impacted. There's a call out of 300,000 of reservists. But can they really hold Gaza? What do they do?
So is this an incursion into Gaza from Israel? Is that what they're planning?
Yeah.
Are they planning an invasion?
I can't second-guess them because this has a very unhappy history. Gaza regained independence from Israeli occupation because they didn't want to go near it in 2005, 2006, and they had the election. There have been 4... This is the 5th major military operation. They have gone badly. Israeli troops do not like being on the ground in Gaza. It is alien territory, and they cannot hold it. And the idea that, you know, you can drive the Palestinians out, and Mr. Netanyahu said, oh, everybody should leave. But where do they go? Yeah. The Mediterranean Sea. I'm not being facetious because the obvious way out is the south into Egypt. Egypt doesn't want them.
The First Minister of Scotland, Holmes, his in-laws are trapped there. They would like to see their parents there, and now they can't get out. They can't.
It's always been the problem. Been a big problem.
Yeah. So how do you get in and out of Gaza?
Well, this is part of the big question, isn't it? How on earth they got all that weaponry, all that intelligence, all that ability to launch that kind of attack when they have been occupied for so long. And, you know, I suppose the question with the siege, I thought it was really interesting what Antonio Guterres from the United Nations said yesterday. Really careful diplomatic language, saying that he recognised the legitimate grievances of the Palestinians, and he also recognised Israel's security concerns, but reminded Israel that military operations must be conducted in strict accordance with international and humanitarian law. I mean, he was walking on eggshells, wasn't he? But you can see why. But that is the point about Gaza. I mean, how on earth were those materials getting in and out?
Well, that's the thing, and they did it. And there's now an accusation of the Israelis that a lot of it was happening hidden in plain sight. One of the things that I was struck, you've asked me about 3 or 4 questions, which I'd love to answer, but I don't think we've got time. But on this, what was so interesting, seeing a lot of those young men who were pumped up, they had looked as if they had done a lot of bodybuilding. They were commando trained. Commando trained at least 1,000, possibly thousands. How did that happen? And there must have been professional training as well as the materiel. They make a lot themselves. That's one of the things that they learned how to do, and they smuggle it in parts, usually through the tunnels, but they've managed to get it in. The problem that has been so toxic, too, is that they've been under a dictatorship of Hamas. Hamas got elected into power in 2006 and has never shown any sign that it wants to give it up. Have an election all over again. It's the same on the West Bank with a different Palestinian authority of Fatah under Mahmoud Abbas. They talk about democracy, but they're pretty averse to carrying it out.
When you come back, I'm very keen to find out the... I suppose the grip, the grasp, the influence that Russia or China would have on all of this, and what world reaction would be against all of that. So
Russia, China, Iran and the Arabs. We've got to talk about that. But I would like to answer your question when I come back about access. Only 7 or 8 access points and only 2 used mainstream in and out. And the Gazans wanted to do it because actually they wanted to go to Israel to earn money.
So complicated, so complicated. Robert, really appreciate your analysis. As we say, we'll talk about this for an hour. We'll take viewers' comments and calls on this, and then we'll have you back after 7 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed, Robert Fox.
Well, whilst all of this is unfolding in the Middle East, it is also Labour conference up in Liverpool, and in his big speech today, the leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will promise a decade of national renewal as he promises a generation of new towns to get Britain building again.
Under these proposals, state-backed companies with compulsory purchase powers would snap up land at capped rates in order to approve affordable home ownership.
Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, is there for us. Will this be popular, Tom?
It's certainly an audacious plan, and it depends how the Labour Party goes about doing it. It's not the first time in the history of the United Kingdom that new towns have come about. We'll remember places like Milton Keynes that were developed in the 1950s and 60s. And clearly there is some room there for the Labour Party to look at on the M11 corridor and in places perhaps around Cambridge, Oxford, in the wider southeast commuter belt as well. The Labour Party suggests that there'll be a 6-month consultation in the first 6 months of any fresh Labour government to look at the suitable sites for developing these new towns, although of course there may well be local opposition, and this might get to the key of some of the challenges that a future Labour government might have. The leadership very keen to build, but if they take on a load of new seats, perhaps if they have a host of new rural MPs, there could well be some challenges there between those who represent areas perhaps where residents don't want new construction, don't want new building, and the leadership of the Labour Party that wants to deliver it. This is setting the Labour Party up, unless they deliver some pretty detailed specifics in their manifesto, for perhaps some very big parliamentary battles in their first term.
Yes, Tom, thank you very much indeed. So what time is Keir Starmer speaking at?
He'll be speaking at 2 p.m. today. It'll be his big set-piece speech, and he'll try and convince the people of the United Kingdom to answer the question, why Labour? It seems that the Labour Party seems to understand that people have said not Conservatives. That's what all the polling tends to point to. But not yet has this party answered the question, why Labour? Winning by default is how some around Sir Keir Starmer see the position of the Labour Party. And so greater detail will be needed to not just have an anti-Conservative vote getting the Labour Party in, but a pro-Labour one. That's the challenge of Sir Keir Starmer at 2 p.m.
And Tom, the feeling that I'm getting out of conference so far is that they want to project the idea that they are a party who can get things done. So there's talk about, say, for instance, affordable housing or employment conditions, 0-hour contracts or whatever. They're sort of saying, right, enough talk, we will get this done. They're nailing their flag to the mast here. Will that go down well?
This is an incredibly staged, managed event. Listening to Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, in her speech yesterday, it was interesting how she did mention things, as you say, like affordable housing and indeed some of these bans on 0 hours contracts. I have to say, there was nothing new in her speech. She was going back over previous announcements that the Labour Party have made, and in that shows the sort of cautiousness with which the Labour Party is approaching this conference. They know that they've got a large lead in the polls. They don't want to disrupt that status quo. And so what we're hearing time and time again, what we heard in Angela Rayner's speech, what we heard in Rachel Reeves' speech, was re-announcements of things that had already been declared. The watchword of this conference so far has been caution. It'll be absolutely fascinating to see if Sir Keir Starmer sticks by that tried and tested method of not being particularly controversial, not being particularly new, or if there is perhaps a rabbit or two in his speech this afternoon. Because clearly what the Labour Party is trying to do is present a sense of it being the grown-up party, ready for government. It's fascinating this year compared to previous years. More people here wearing suits, more big corporate sponsors around this conference, and indeed a greater sense of perhaps responsibility here. This is the first conference where there's been a sustained lead in the polls running up to it, and frankly, the Labour Party don't want to mess it up.
Tom, thank you. Appreciate that. Rachel Reeves yesterday, very pumped up, very, very confident. Be interested in your views, what you thought of her speech yesterday, and previewing Keir Starmer's speech today. GBviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBnews.
The time's 6:18. You're watching Breakfast on GB News. Let's bring you up to date with the latest on what's been happening in the Middle East.
Israel's bombing of Gaza continued overnight in response to the rocket attack on Saturday. According to reports, 900 Israelis have died, including 260 people who were killed by Hamas gunmen at that peace music festival. Gaza's health ministry said at least 690 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes.
Israel's declared a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, cutting off electricity, food, fuel and water to the region. The United Nations says that at least 7 medical centres have been damaged. The Palestinian authorities have warned the siege will lead to a new humanitarian crisis in Gaza, adding that not all Palestinians support Hamas.
More than 10 British citizens are feared dead or missing. 20-year-old Nathaniel Young has been killed during fighting. He was serving with the Israeli Defence Force. Hamas has threatened it will execute civilians and soldiers that have been kidnapped in return for any new Israeli bombing of civilian homes in Gaza.
Well, it was a gorgeous day weather-wise, wasn't it, yesterday in the UK? Very sunny, really, well, certainly down south. I'm not sure about up north. Let's find out from Greg Dewhurst, shall we, how today's shaping up.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We've got heavy rain across Scotland through today, bringing some disruption. There'll be some spells of hazy sunshine elsewhere, but it is quite a grey start this morning, some low cloud mist and fog, slowly burning back as we go through the morning, but taking its time. We can see the heavy rain across northwest Scotland, this slowly pushing its way southeastwards. A Met Office rain warning in force here, 20 to 50 millimetres of rain possible, leading to some local flooding in places. Cloudier further southwards across northern parts of England, but the best of the hazy sunshine once again. Central and southern parts of England and Wales, 23, possibly 24 degrees. That heavy rain continues to slowly push its way southeastwards through Tuesday evening. The Met Office warning eases during the evening time as that rain clears, showers following, and then rain turning heavy as it moves into Wales, into the Midlands during the early hours. Southeastern areas staying generally dry. Temperatures turning fresher across the north, single figures here, holding up 14 to 16 Celsius further south. So this cloudy wet zone across central parts of the UK Wednesday morning, this generally slowly moving southeastwards as we head through the day. Quite a muggy feel to things here. Brighter across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, but quite a cool, blustery northwesterly breeze here with some showers filtering in. Temperatures here lower than recent days, 12 to 15, up to around 21 towards the southeast. See you soon.
Still to come, could patchy grass defeat England in the Cricket World Cup? Paul Coyle will tell you.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute.
Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Hello, good morning. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, this is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel, soon to be joined by Paul Coit.
With all the cricket news.
Yes.
Your speciality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got more than cricket.
Oh, of course you do. We were just teasing the cricket.
OK.
That's all.
OK.
You can start with something else if you'd prefer.
Should we start with Euros? What do you do?
Let's start with the Euros. That sounds
What do you want to say?
We heard this proposal for the World Cup, and it's all over the world, and it met with a lot of criticism.
Correct.
Now we're getting the 2028 Euros, and they're giving a bit here and a bit there and a bit everywhere.
Because it seems that whenever we bid for anything, we never quite get it. And so for the Euros 2028, it was decided that it would be a combined bid, UK and Ireland. Everybody gets a few games, that therefore...
So a bid in Scotland, bid in Wales, bid in England, bid in
28
Ireland.
matches in England, 6 matches in Scotland, Wales and Ireland, 5 matches in Northern Ireland at Casement Park, which I believe is...
Not built.
Is not, still not built yet.
I'll tell you that for a fact.
So will it be ready for 2028? Do we think that's going to be ready?
No idea. It's a Gaelic ground.
That's what it's being built for, isn't it? But that's what the bid is based on. But this is the easiest bid in the world, because although UEFA are going to announce who the winning bid is, and you know what they do it like FIFA, and then they go and the winning bid is, there's only one name, because Turkey were actually bidding, but now they've pulled out because they're going for the next Euros along with Italy. So
Turkey's a great country, you know. Do you know much about Turkey?
I've been to Turkey quite a few times.
Yeah,
I saw Besiktas play.
Sorry? You got Besiktas?
Listen, I had a slight case of Besiktas when I was out there. It was cleared up in no time and everything was fine. But Besiktas, as well as being an ailment, is actually a very well-known football team in Istanbul, and it's a great place to watch football.
It is. But Casement Park will be a great place to watch football.
Well, I hope so.
When it's built.
Yeah, when it's built. So hopefully, if it is built, there'll be games. If not, there may be more here.
We've got another stadium, the National Stadium, which is the home ground of Linfield FC, which is there. And then there would that extend into the Republic of Ireland as well?
Yes, there's
right, so Casement,
6 games there. No, there's 6 games in the Republic as well.
Oh, right. Good.
So anyway,
that's good.
2028, it's going to be announced today.
So we all get a little bit of something.
We all get a little bit of something. So where you were thinking that maybe a little bit of something is not so good, a little bit of something can do you good. So maybe that's actually okay.
A little bit of that's
the one. That moves us on to the cricket, because that was used for theme for the cricket.
Yes.
So I see exactly what you were doing. I liked it very much. So England are playing Bangladesh at the moment I know, Izzy, you've been across this.
Oh, yeah.
That England are playing Bangladesh at the moment in the World Cup. The outfield apparently is horrendous. Josh Butler has said that... He's used the phrase again, that it's questioning the integrity of the game. I'm fed up with this ridiculous phrase, which means nothing. Liverpool were using it a week ago about it's questioning the integrity of the game.
Well, in the cricket, it's to do with the surface, is it? And
the surface,
with Liverpool, it's to do with the refereeing.
There's always something to do with the integrity of the game.
Got to protect that integrity.
Always got to protect the integrity.
The other word they love to use in football is respect.
Yes.
You're not showing me respect, which, incidentally, I'm going to insist from you here on in.
Well, you know what, my friend? You may be a big shot, but it works both ways. Do you know what I'm saying? A little bit of Besiktas to you as well.
So then you've got the... so that's the Cricket World Cup.
Yeah.
But the cricket in the Olympics...
Absolutely.
In Los Angeles. It'll go down well there. 2028 as well.
I've tried to explain cricket to Americans before, and they're going, hey, it's a little like golf, isn't it? And you go, well, actually, it's absolutely nothing like golf whatsoever. So cricket, last time it was in the Olympics was in 1900. And it's now being brought back as T20. They're actually going to bring back... See, the thing is, they're going with all old sports. You know, it was like... breakdancing, ping pong... Well, lacrosse.
Breakdancing?
Well, breakdancing is in the Olympics. Yeah, it was in the last Olympics. No, but what I'm saying is that they were new ones, whereas now they're going, like, back to the future.
Back to the future.
So they're going to bring lacrosse, which was, you know... It's a very old American sport going back to the 1800s.
As if they haven't got enough sports in the Olympics. You think just stick to track and field?
Do you think so?
Of course. Well, that to me is what the Olympics is about, track and field.
It's only because I'm a lacrosse specialist, and so therefore, I thought, Apparently that's one of the ball. You remember we were talking about how fast a ball can travel, and golf is probably the fastest because it goes about 200 miles an hour. Lacrosse, when they whip that ball, very
So
very
if
fast.
you had an Olympic sport to do or to take part in, you could do lacrosse, so that would be your...
Well, actually darts, I think, but
Darts.
I don't think darts is going to make it to the
shooting
Olympics.
for me.
Would it be shooting?
Shooting, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, shooting's in the Commonwealth Games, isn't it? But I don't think they use it for the Olympics.
I think they do.
Do they? Clay pigeon?
They do it in the Winter Olympics, don't they? They do all that skiing.
Oh, yeah.
I'd quite like to go shooting with you because I'm an all right shot as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to see who's better.
And do you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to have targets full of all the people we hate. No? No, is that not a good idea? No.
But
a big
they
smiley
you
face
can,
on the clay pigeon.
pigeons. They can pretend they're pigeons. And they could do bunnies on the ground, and you can powder them as well.
Oh,
They bounce along
the
the floor.
These sounded a bit like that. I found that a bit uncomfortable.
Sorry, no, you don't imagine they're bunnies. It's just a different way they fly.
Without bunnies, let's talk about a doggy, right?
Yeah,
Just
I love
a dog
this.
on
I
a
love
pitch.
this.
OK. This often happens.
Well, a Mexican second division game between Alebrijes, Oaxaca and Dorados. There we are. Now look at the dog. There's the dog. I love a dog on a pitch.
What's the ball?
Alebrijes are winning 4-0. The dog appears. Now, watch this. Now, not only does he nudge he actually manages to grab hold of the ball, which is pretty impressive. Look, and off he goes. So everybody's chasing the ball. Three minutes time added on, which probably then turned into 7 because they couldn't get the ball off the dog. Everybody's chasing the dog. This, in times of toil and trouble and worry, all we need to see sometimes is a dog on a football pitch.
And is it going to the goal? Is it going to put the ball in the goal?
Well, it was over 7 hours they were chasing this.
No. But you know what? The fact that the
is.
ball is in its mouth would make it easier for me to launch a tackle because I'd be worried about them nipping.
Yeah, that's true.
So when, teeth are busy, that's good with me.
I've got to tell you, though, a size 5 football, for a dog to get his teeth around that is pretty impressive.
You have to have a big mouth.
You do.
For that. But, what are they all bothering about? Let the dog have the ball, and off you go, and then start the game with another ball, and everybody's happy. What are they chasing the dog for?
Everybody enjoys that. I mean, it happened. There's a famous old Jimmy Greaves clip. Do you remember that? I think it was from the '62 World Cup where a dog grabbed hold of the ball. Everybody was chasing it, and Jimmy managed to cajole the dog, took the dog under his arm, then took the ball out. It was a lovely moment. That's all they needed to do.
That's all they needed to do.
I hope the dog was fine. I hope they were nice to the dog.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Appreciate it. Paul will be back in an hour's time.
Now, coming up, should we be cancelling Christmas lights this year to save money? We'll be going through all the top stories in Headline Makers with Carol McGiffin and James Schneider next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you.
every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other pay-per-review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 6:33.
We were just talking.
Breakfast, yeah, don't mind us.
What? We were talking about.
What were we talking about?
Carol McGiffin here and I were talking about when you used to get on airplanes, you got gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, free
Get a little
stuff.
warm flannel, no?
No, we're talking
glass of
about.
champers?
No, we're
What are we
talking
talking
about
about?
a fountain pen.
Oh, come on now.
And things like.
What,
you know,
in economy?
No.
No,
what
darling.
is economy? What is that?
It's where you turn right.
Oh, right. So we were saying when I used to work for the holiday programme, and one of the nice things was occasionally you would get a perk up into first class, and they would give you like real gifts.
Oh, yeah. And caviar, champagne.
We were talking about Carol.
Not that I've ever been in first class, but
Carol came in and she was brandishing this, and I then took mine out. This is a gift from Emirates Airlines.
Look at you two.
Yes. So, and it's the best comb. It's the best.
It's brilliant.
Brush. It's absolutely
it was
brilliant.
Free.
So there we are. We keep them to this day. That's what you get now.
I did as a child collect the wash bags that my dad would come back from.
Yeah.
As a child, you.
Oh,
mean,
they
you
sell on
mean
eBay
steal
now
the
for a lot of
wash
money.
bags,
My
even
father
now.
would give them to me. No, I didn't get a wash. They didn't do wash bags on flights I get anyway.
My parents used to go to events like, you know, I don't know what at night, whatever, and they would come back with little umbrellas, cocktail things.
Oh yeah, I
with
used
an
to love
umbrella.
those.
And they would give you them the next day, and you think this is amazing.
Yeah, I
this
used to love a
amazing
little
thing.
cocktail. I don't think my kids have ever seen a cocktail umbrella. We had to bring
ever
back
seen
a
a
cocktail
cocktail
umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's James Schneider, who's with you this morning. He's saying, "What have I got myself embroiled in today?" But very good to see you, James and Carol are here, and they're both going through the newspaper. So let's do that now. We start, James, with you. We start with the Guardian and front page. The whole thing. Israel, they're saying the siege of Gaza as Hamas threatens the captives.
So most of the reporting in not just The Guardian, across the papers today seems to be ignoring the fact or refusing to call out the fact that the Israeli state announced that it was going to commit war crimes and then presented evidence on social media that it was committing war crimes against the besieged population of Gaza, 2.3 million people, the majority of whom are refugees from their own land, half of whom are children, whose homes, whose hospitals.
Yeah, James, I know. We all know that. We all know that. We all know that. What we can say is everything off the table, is everything null and void when you get a music festival on Saturday that is invaded by terrorists who shoot and rape and kidnap over 200 people.
The reason why we have international law, the reason why we have established for what are war crimes, what is collective punishment, is not so that these things can be wiped away and forgotten about when there is another atrocity to respond to. These are war crimes that are being committed with British bombs and British bullets and being supported by our government, also the governments of the EU and the US. And it is atrocious that our Parliament last night was decked out in support of war crimes. Now, does that mean that there can be any justification for attacking civilians, for attacks on this music festival? Of course not. But the idea that we should be standing here and justifying, because that's what it is, justifying war
Well, I think
crimes.
Antonio Guterres had it very, very well when he said there is absolutely no justification for involving civilians, and he also reminded people about, you have to operate within strict international law.
Correct.
But the state of Israel exists because of its security. It is a very sensitive issue for Israel. Its sovereign territory was invaded. We know that the death toll's more than 900 people since Saturday. How are they supposed to exercise, and which the British and the West have come out and say, how are they supposed to just react and respond? They are allowed to do that legitimately.
You're not legitimately allowed to engage in collective
so you
punishment
have to
of
target
population.
military targets,
You're not allowed
right?
to engage in
So
collective
they have been
punishment.
announcing when the strikes are going to be into Gaza. That's what the Israelis
No,
would
Netanyahu
say.
has said we're not going to do the TAP announcements anymore. They have said that they are a minister from Likud, the ruling party, has said this is going to be a Nakba, a catastrophe like 1948, worse than 1948.
So how should Israel respond to what happened this weekend, in your view?
So I would look to the paper of record of Israel, Haaretz, whose editorial committee yesterday said that the atrocities that were carried out over the weekend...
And are continuing.
Yes, the atrocities that were carried out over the weekend are the responsibility of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government's policies. This is the paper of record of Israel, Haaretz. That is their editorial position, because violence...
Sounds like you're justifying acts of terror.
No, I am not. Violence begets violence. If you are going to displace people from their land, put them in an open-air prison... 2.3 million people under the most extreme blockade in the entire world. When it says complete siege, it already is a siege. This is an occupied land and
Antonio Guterres again, he recognised their legitimate concerns.
Yes, Antonio Guterres is
But he
correct.
also recognised the legitimate security concerns of Israel.
Sure.
If it doesn't have its safe state of Israel, what is the point of Israel? That's why it's there. And this was the biggest attack on Israelis since the Holocaust.
So there is...
They have a right to defend themselves.
So, yeah, everyone has a right to defend themselves, and also the Palestinian people also have a UN-mandated right, as all occupied and colonised people do, to struggle for self-determination and national liberation by any available means within international law. Now, is attacking a concert that?
No, but James, with your argument, you know, the premise of all of the responses to 9/11 were immoral, illegal by that reasoning, and we saw how the United States responded. You know, the war on terror.
Horrifically,
okay.
Trillions of dollars spent, millions of lives dead, hundreds of millions of lives absolutely ruined. If Israel responds in the way that the US responded to 9/11, we should condemn it. We should not stand side by side. We should not put forward our diplomatic support, and we shouldn't offer our bombs and our bullets to kill people.
Are you saying that Israel shouldn't defend itself?
That's not what I'm saying.
But there's a lot of people out there defending Hamas at the moment and the Palestinian attack. They're literally on the streets of London defending it. So,
hold on.
You know, how do you justify that?
OK, two things. First,
you're getting very technical.
No. Please respond to what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is very precise and very correct. And do not say that all the people protesting yesterday in Britain and where else around the world against the stated extension of war crimes committed against the Palestinian people after 75 years of crimes committed against them are doing so because they support terrorism. That is not true, and that is itself racist. That is itself a form of anti-Palestinian bigotry, because you are lied always
but it
into
was deemed, a lot of people were offended, and I think to some of the protests because of the timing. Then they felt it was inappropriate Can I just put the alternative argument, because this is what they would say. And there was a lot of people very upset, and we heard from the chief rabbi in London yesterday saying, show me a Jewish family in this country who have not been affected by the atrocities. And we're talking about children being taken hostage. We're talking about elderly ladies being taken hostage, shot at point blank, men being decapitated on film. All of this footage, very, very distressed and upset Jewish people. And to then have people protesting...
How long?
Is just inappropriate.
What is the... OK, after...
That's what they would say.
After Gaza is being flattened, the Palestinian ambassador to Britain, 6 members of his family yesterday were killed in Gaza. How long should they wait? How long should they wait for justice? How long is the appropriate amount of time to say Britain, which is... whose war crimes is Britain complicit in? We, as British citizens, are we complicit in what Hamas
James,
No, we are not. But we are complicit in what is happening right now in the Gaza Strip.
That you are almost apologising or an
No,
apologist
I'm
for
not.
Hamas. Do you recognise them as a terrorist organisation?
I recognise that in law they are a terrorist organisation.
Do you recognise them? I'm not asking in law. Because that draws the line in the sand for a lot of people who will just see that you are just trying to justify.
I am not.
their actions.
No, I am not. Listen to every single word I have said. At no point have I ever justified terrorism.
Okay.
Terrorism by Palestinians or the terrorism which is being carried out by the Israeli state. Of course I do not. Of course I do not. But it is an absurd fiction to take one set of crimes, which are terrible, and to say these are terrible crimes, and then to take these whole other crimes over here and say, no, those are fine, those are fine, those are the justifiable response because they have to defend themselves.
I don't think you'll find anyone who will justify women and children being caught up in this on
or even
either
justify
side.
war
On either side.
But it isn't. But let's go back to the roots and let's not just do this like on the one hand, on the other hand thing, right? Why are Gazans in an open-air prison? Why is there no peace process? Why is Hamas the power in Gaza? Could it?
Well, there
wait,
won't be
hold
a peace
on.
process now.
Could it,
well, hang
could
on,
it
you
be?
can't. This is
Could
a
it be?
political
Could it be? Could it
monologue
be?
for you. This is a conversation.
Could it be?
But just to say, you know, there can't be a negotiated. There can't be peace discussions when you have these kinds of atrocities happening. The actions of Hamas have set back a generation of people living in Gaza, many of whom who will not support Hamas.
No, that may well, of course, be true. That's a question for history to tell, and that may absolutely well be true. But Israel's finance minister has said that Hamas is, for them, an asset because they have no legitimacy, as you're saying, in the international community, and their enemy is the Palestinian Authority, which is why also Netanyahu's policy has been to decapitate the alternative Palestinian leadership and effectively support Hamas. There is no peace process underway, and the reason why there's no peace process underway is not on the side of the Palestinians, that is on the side of Israeli government policy, as stated again and again and again.
James,
this is a government which wants to annex those territories.
I hear what you're saying and what you're passionately saying, and in the past you have been an advisor to Jeremy Corbin, who couldn't get the same message across. Why is it that Britain doesn't want to listen to the message that you and Mr Corbyn would have had?
Well, Jeremy can speak for himself, I'll speak for myself. I think that most people listening to what I have said, if they go and look at the evidence, will agree with that. And also, if you look at the polling of public attitudes towards Israel and Palestine, despite the absurd media coverage that there is over the issue, you will find that the British people are in general terms on the side of peace and justice.
Well, just to draw a line at the end, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom saying this isn't a time for equivocation. I am unequivocal. I stand with Israel. He said that I know at moments like this, when the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We have already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say not here, not in Britain, not in our country, not in this century.
OK, with that, we will take a break at the time 6:45, and we'll be back. And then, Carol, we'll hear from you.
Thank you.
Oh, there's no break. There's no break. I worked you all up into a fervour there about a break. So, Carol, let's turn to you. The Labour Party conference today. Keir Starmer, big speech.
Yeah, a bit of light relief, really. I mean, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for Starmer's speech. I think it's about 2 o'clock, isn't it? More electioneering, more promises, more we'll do this, we'll do that, when in actual fact it's the same. It's the same stuff as the Tories said. But the interesting thing about the Labour Party is now they're trying to sell themselves as the party with economic credibility, and I find that quite amusing. I mean, I don't think that the Tories are particularly credible in the economic area either, but for Labour to come out and say that, and to say that they are going to restore economic credibility and give the country its future back, is just laughable when you think, I mean, how long have they not been in power? Quite a long time, but who doesn't remember the Chancellor at the time, I think it was the Chancellor, Liam Byrne, with leaving the note saying there's no money left. And that is the problem with Labour, and the problem with real socialists is they, like Margaret Thatcher said, they run out of other people's money eventually, and they did. But the Tories are worse. I mean, you know, they just went on a printing spree, and have created inflation, which
when you
Labour are
look at
not
what
talking about at all.
But I think they're talking about a lot of policy that will appeal to people, like abolishing zero-hours contracts, about talking about getting some social housing
Very
built in this
idealistic,
country.
though, isn't it, Eamonn? I mean, it is just promises, promises, promises. How are you actually going to do that? You know, you can't get that genie back in the bottle, the whole 0 hours contracts. You can't suddenly just expect everybody to have, you know, a proper work contract. There are so many things. And you can stand up at a party conference and just say whatever you want.
OK.
And people will go, yeah, they'll probably vote for Labour.
They're doing their best to save money. And you've taken a story from the Daily Mail. Christmas lights have been cancelled by Medway Council.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. That's the first thing to go, isn't it? Don't worry about all the salaries of the highly paid civil servants in these councils that are mostly the reason why the councils are going bankrupt. Let's just pick on the Christmas lights. Oh, it's so predictable and it's so infuriating. Like, let's take the joy out of life. But we'll give ourselves a nice little pay rise at the same time, and we won't get rid of anyone. No one's going to lose their job here. We're all going to have great pensions, but we're not going to put the lights on for you little people.
Well, it'll save 75 grand.
75 grand.
But also, I would have thought, Isabel, there's some sort of resistance nowadays to Christmas lights and the environment.
Yes, I'd have thought it'd be more along the sort of...
Here we go.
No.
Here we go.
It doesn't work for you?
No, of course not. I mean, you know, most lights now are LED. They use hardly any power, any electricity. You know, surely these councils... Doesn't everybody just take the lights down and then put them back up again?
It's pretty much on beginning of November, though, most places don't they? It goes on forever.
James, if you were advising Labour-controlled Medway Council, what would you tell them in terms of Christmas joy, Christmas lights, against saving 75k?
Don't do this. It's the maddest thing you could possibly do. I mean, of course, there's a bigger thing. Councils have had all their funding cut, etc., etc. It's not all their fault, but they are able to take a decision. Do you want to bring some joy with 75 grand or not? And of course, they should have Christmas lights. I mean, it's very silly to not.
OK. In America, I see this story and I worry at the same time. Robert Kennedy's son, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is going to run as an independent for the presidency.
Yes, so he was previously trying to challenge Joe Biden to be the Democratic candidate. And he had a little surge at the beginning. I mean, he was never anywhere with a good chance, but he had a little surge at the beginning because people saw the Kennedy name and they hadn't really heard very much about him before, and he seemed like he had a different line on Ukraine and COVID, and some people, we'll listen to that. And then as it went on, and he went on more and more media that Democratic primary voters hate and said more and more things that Democratic primary voters
Such as?
hate.
What sort of things? Because the headline that I've heard circulating this morning is he said two-party politics, this divided, sort of congested politics that we have has produced one candidate who is facing civil and criminal charges, and on the other hand, one who, you know, is borderline Alzheimer's. And so, you know, he's criticising this is what you've got from a two-party... And that sounded like a persuasive argument. We look over from the West, from over here in the UK and think, well, actually, maybe they do need a bit more diversity of parties. But what were his views that the
Julius Nyerere, the independence leader of Tanzania, said that the United States is a one-party state, but with traditional American exuberance, they have two of them. And of course, he's quite right. He's quite right
Same
there.
here.
But, well, yes, indeed, same
at the moment, yeah.
But you know, the one party is a party of corporate control. In the US, it is much worse than here because corruption is legalised and corporate funding for politics is absolutely tremendous. So that bit of his message could work out. But for Democratic primary voters, he was speaking to the types of media like Tucker Carlson and so on and so forth that Democratic primary voters generally don't like. But now he's running as an independent and therefore probably more likely to take potential votes away from Trump, actually, rather than Biden.
Well, you know, Carol, from my point of view, I'm a great student of JFK, and I just look and the Bobby Kennedy assassination as well, and you look and you say, surely this lad, if I was a part of his family, I'd be saying, don't do this, because this is like painting a target on his head.
I think he should do it, actually.
But every nutcase in the land will be out to get him.
Well, yes, I know, and I think he's prepared for that. I think he's as tough as Trump, I think. And I think it's a good thing that he's ditched the Democrats. It was the one thing I think that people were thinking about, you know, they probably wouldn't vote for him because he was still within the Democrat Party. It's... I think it's a good decision on his part. So it's going to be a tough win. I don't know if enough people will vote for him because I think people are, you know, they're a bit like here. They vote for Labour or they vote for Conservative. You know, occasionally they vote for the Liberal Democrats, not much. But it is like people think, oh, it's either this or it's either that. So I don't know if it'll do any good. But I think it's done his credibility a lot of good, actually, by ditching them.
So, Carol, when you stay in the Hilton hotel, what are you looking for?
What sort of freebies do you get? Do they give you a comb and a wash bag?
You get a few freebies, I think. The last time I stayed in a Hilton, there were quite good freebies, actually. No, I certainly don't look on the menu for carbon ratings. Here we go with more carbon measuring madness. Now, menus are already a bit crowded, right? Because you've got what you're going to eat, you've got the calories, you've got whether or not they're vegan or whether they contain nuts or anything else, you know, a list of ingredients. And then now you've got, oh, this is how much carbon you're going to use up out of your future carbon allowance if you eat this dish. I mean, it's insane.
So my menu will tell me, Emma, before you have that burger, is it environmentally friendly?
Well, by definition, a burger ain't environmentally friendly.
Right.
But, you know, this isn't a new concept. I have to say, a lot of fancy restaurants do a sort of a footprint of where their foods come from, and it's trying to encourage local and eat seasonal.
Yeah, but a carbon measurement.
There's no way to deal with climate breakdown. Climate breakdown's not going to be changed by the slightly different consumer choices. Also pretending that it's the fault of people choosing this type of meal rather than that type of meal is just not true. If you want to deal with climate breakdown, you have to go to the root causes. You have to deal with the energy system and fossil fuels and how we manage production. This is
that's debatable, though, isn't it?
Sitting there, just want a club sandwich. I enjoy a club sandwich.
Well, you can have one with a sign.
So this is all for the future of, you know, the digital ID, which you will have a carbon allowance, which I talked about on here last week.
For travel.
And once you've used up that carbon allowance, that's it. You won't be able to eat what's on that menu. You won't be able to drive your car. You won't be able to fly. You won't be able to do anything. But you can sell your carbon credits to rich people who can go and do whatever they want.
You can have a club sandwich.
That is the reality,
but you
and
just
it's
have to have a side portion of guilt, shame and hand-wringing.
Well, again, as well as that, it is trying to make people, shame people into, you know, destroying the planet because it's you. It's the little people that are destroying the planet, not that lot.
Paris Hilton, when I think of Paris Hilton, I think private jet. I think, you know, jetting around the world. She doesn't.
Why not?
See, the thing about Hilton's is
747.
They have them graded in different ways. You can have, they're like franchises, right? But there's no consistency.
Yeah, some are great, some are
You can get a lovely Hilton or you can get a really trashy,
but they've got like they've got a family now, haven't they? They've got like the Hampton Hilton. They've got the little, you know, the little sisters, which are more economical. But you've got the big ones, the posh ones as well. They're still there.
Not still there.
And take the word for it, Carol.
OK, just quick. If you're ordering off your room menu, what would you have?
Oh, probably a club sandwich.
Yes, I go for a club sandwich.
But I like the beef ones.
Not? Club sandwich for you?
Yeah, that'd be very nice. I'm hungry.
OK.
Thank you. Here's the weather picture. Greg Dewhurst.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We've got heavy rain across Scotland through today, bringing some disruption. There'll be some spells of hazy sunshine elsewhere, but it is quite a grey start this morning, some low cloud mist and fog, slowly burning back as we go through the morning, but taking its time. We can see the heavy rain across northwest Scotland, this slowly pushing its way southeastwards. A Met Office rain warning in force here, 20 to 50 millimetres of rain possible, leading to some local flooding in places. Cloudier further southwards across northern parts of England, but the best of the hazy sunshine once again. Central and southern parts of England and Wales, 23, possibly 24 degrees. That heavy rain continues to slowly push its way southeastwards through Tuesday evening. The Met Office warning eases during the evening time as that rain clears, showers following, and then rain turning heavy as it moves into Wales, into the Midlands during the early hours. Southeastern areas staying generally dry. Temperatures turning fresher across the north, single figures here, holding up 14 to 16 Celsius further south. So this cloudy wet zone across central parts of the UK Wednesday morning, this generally slowly moving southeastwards as we head through the day. Quite a muggy feel to things here. Brighter across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, but quite a cool, blustery northwesterly breeze here with some showers filtering in. Temperatures here lower than recent days, 12 to 15, up to around 21 towards the southeast. See you soon.
Thank you, Greg. We will take a break, and obviously the big story of the day, the big story dominating, Hamas are threatening to execute hostages, Israel preparing for a ground invasion in Gaza. We've been asking you what you think. Obviously, debate here in the studio has been very, very heated about this, and it is just, does Israel have any other choice but to seize Gaza?
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock, Tuesday, the 10th of October. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that enormous force will be used against Hamas as the bombing of Gaza continues overnight. Israel ordering a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. They will cut off food, fuel, electricity and water supplies.
In the UK, 3 people have been arrested during pro-Palestinian protests outside the Israeli embassy in London, which had to be boarded up. The Home Secretary has asked for more police patrols to protect Jewish communities throughout England and Wales. The Prime Minister says the UK is poised to offer Israel military help if required.
At the Labour Party conference, Keir Starmer set to deliver his keynote speech. It's in Liverpool. Our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, is there. Tom, good morning.
Why Labour? That's the question that Keir Starmer will set out to answer at 2 p.m. this afternoon. He believes that the party is far ahead in the polls, but potentially not safe in that position. A new stream of house building is set to be on the agenda. I'll have the very latest.
Thank you, Tom, and of course your views on this very welcome.
And we're going to have a little update in the programme on the forecast. Greg Dewhurst, even.
Hello there, good morning. We've got some heavy rain, Met Office warnings in force across western parts of Scotland today. Brighter skies eventually further south. Find out all the details coming up in the programme.
So much sport to get through this morning, Paul, quite with that.
I do. 3 things coming back. Cricket to the Olympics, the Euros, and even Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney. Find out where to. You can join in any of our discussions if you've got insight into where Wayne is applying for a job or who's trying to woo him.
Not playing, but managing, yeah, is that right?
Yes, he's a bit old for playing.
Bit old for playing.
He's about as old as me, and in the same
He's
physical
not as
shape.
old as me. He's not.
Well, he looks like me, but
He
like that.
doesn't.
You don't want to
look
be
like
playing.
George
You
Clooney,
wouldn't want to be
remember?
playing football at our age.
He's actually the same age as me.
Yeah.
So I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah. I find that when you look, particularly this Beckham documentary, which is very, very
I'm going to
good,
watch some more
incidentally,
today.
the physical demands on players' bodies.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you think I get to be this specimen of an athlete that I am?
Yeah, training every day.
Absolutely,
just to sit
correct.
there. Right, all that to come.
So it is our top story this morning. Israel has imposed a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. It means no power, no food, no gas. That was the message from the Israeli Defence Minister. In response, Hamas has threatened to start killing civilian hostages if Israel continues to bomb Gaza.
Let's look at the death toll. It continues to rise on both sides. About 900 people have died since Saturday's surprise attack, including 260 people who were killed by Hamas gunmen at that peace music festival in Israel.
Well, since Israel began bombing Gaza in response, almost 690 Palestinians have died.
Tensions remain high as demonstrations break out not only in London but right across the world. You're seeing here footage of pro-Israel rallies that have been held on the streets of Chile, as well as in Paris, Brussels and Colombia, all pro-Israeli.
There have also been pro-Palestinian protests in New York, Buenos Aires and in London. The Metropolitan Police are reporting hate crimes against the Jewish community.
Now, speaking last night at the United Synagogue in London, Rishi Sunak said attempts to stir up community tensions will not be tolerated in Britain.
I know that at moments like this, when the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain. Not in our country. Not in this century.
Well, the leaders of France, Germany, Italy and the UK, as well as the United States, have released a joint statement expressing their steadfast and united support to the state of Israel.
Look at that. That's Westminster, lit up in colours of the Israeli flag, attracting a lot of controversy. That more than 10 people from Britain are believed to be dead or missing in Israel. The Foreign Secretary, who we'll be interviewing later in the programme, says he won't speculate on the number of British nationals involved, but you can be guaranteed it is more than those 10.
Well, Number 10 say that the UK is working closely with Israel to locate and bring any British nationals to safety.
It will be an anxious time for many families who have loved ones in the region. It's a quite complex situation on the ground, so we are working very closely with our Israeli counterparts to establish the status of any British nationals on the ground. That work is underway as we speak. But for anyone who does have family or friends in the region, the most important thing for them to do is follow the Foreign Office advice, but also the advice of the Israeli Home Command.
Now, just to update you on an interview that we did yesterday, Pelestia Alaquad, who we were speaking to yesterday, and she had lost a very close friend of hers who was working in the press corps. He was killed, and just in those 24 hours, Palestia's life again has been turned upside down. Let's go to her live from a hospital bed in Gaza on this one. Palestia, what happened since we spoke yesterday?
A lot has happened. You know, yesterday I described the situation and I said like 8 massacres has been happening and how civilians are being killed and how the death toll has raised to 900. But today I'm telling you what happened yesterday and what is still happening. It's a genocide, literally a genocide. It's not a massacre. Like, no words can describe what's happening. Like, I'm currently in Gaza. I'm supposed to update you or give you news about Gaza or about what's happening, but I'm literally in Gaza and I don't know what's happening. The Israeli forces are really bombing everywhere. They bomb schools, they bomb mosques, commercial buildings, marketplaces. Like, I don't know what are their targets exactly. They bombed the city. Like, yesterday, they bombed the Tili. Can you hear me well?
Palestia, we're very sorry. I'm finding it really hard to hear you. But as I understand it, your home was bombed, was hit by a shell, was destroyed.
I'm not sure to what point it was destroyed. What happened exactly is they bombed like many buildings and a university close to my home. Like, I stayed at my home, at my building. The neighbors, we also stayed because no one told us to evacuate the building I'm in. Then suddenly, like without warning, without previous warning, they bombed one apartment in the building and I was inside of it. Then the Palestinian civil defense, they came and they took us out, and when we were leaving, like the building caught a fire. So I don't know to what point it's destroyed, to what point it caught fire. I literally don't know. We came to the hospital and I'm still at the hospital. There is no internet connection. Like, I barely have internet. That's why I wondered if you're hearing me well or not. The electricity situation, it's horrible in Palestine, in Gaza specifically. Also, the media coverage, like, until now, many journalists are dead, many journalists are injured. Around 10, last time I checked, around 10 journalists, they have lost their lives. So no words literally can describe the situation. The last thing that the Israeli bombed was the telecom company. So can you imagine? That explains why we don't have internet, we don't have electricity. Like, even to talk to your friends, journalists, other people that you know, to ask them what's happening or something, you can't do anything. Like, it's...
We aren't able to independently verify any of the figures that you give us there, but goodness me, the situation for you with the loss of your house or what the state is must be incredibly difficult. Thank you for talking to us this morning. It is worth reminding our audience that at the moment the death toll on both sides is frankly staggering. 900 on the Israeli side, and within Gaza, 687 civilians at the last count. And of course, within Palestine, a number of Israeli hostages as well being held there. Let's start with Robert Fox. He's our defence editor from the Evening Standard, but joining us this morning, sort of Prez friend role. Can we talk first of all about the hostage situation? Because this really shocking sort of from the armed wing of Hamas, threat from them that for every strike that is unannounced by Israel into Gaza, they will execute one of the hostages.
Well, it's very difficult, as you say, to verify anything, except that you do get these outrageous and extreme statements on all sides, it must be said, because I look at my former Twitter feed now, X, and you get... The thing that is really, I think, quite serious is the crazy conspiracy theories that this conflict has now automatically, almost by default, involved with the Ukraine. Iran is blamed, the hidden hand of Russia. So what is really going on? Is this really what Hamas is threatening, to kill these hostages, these poor, unfortunate hostages? Because that's a suicide note from them. This is why it's looking so much like a complete impasse, you know, that it's a total stalemate. To say that, yes, you know, that you're going to put Gaza under total siege. Look, it's been under partial siege almost since the Israelis left in 2005, with very, very restricted going in and out.
Robert,
and the problem is that the tension could spread across Israel. And you're right to show maps of the West Bank.
We're seeing the tension spreading to London, for instance, and the Israeli embassy practically under siege. We've got viewers and listeners who are getting in touch with us and say, if Hamas is a prescribed organisation, why are people allowed to protest in favour of them? Why aren't the police out there not stopping them from doing that?
That's a very difficult one, because there is a right to protest, and they would protest, as you heard before, on a human rights issue. And that's very, very difficult, Eamonn, because you do get into George Orwell territory and thought crimes going on here. You've got to be very,
they're still
careful.
a terrorist organisation, or prescribed as such in the UK. I'm not sure you could do the same if you were protesting in favour of the IRA or whatever. But just very interesting. Robert, last time we touched upon this, and we were talking about external influences on this whole situation, how this attack by the Palestinians, by Hamas, was allowed to happen over the weekend, how no one noticed it happening, and the interests that certain other foreign powers have in the area. Have warnings gone out to say, keep your mitts off this?
No. What the Palestinian people, particularly after the 6 Days War, when Israel took a great deal of territory, as you know, and virtually occupied the West Bank and indeed Gaza at that time, they could rely, the Palestinian population, on support, particularly for medical facilities and things like that, from the rich Arabs, particularly the Gulf Arabs. What is so strange is that the Gulf Arabs, Saudi Arabia included, seem to have taken their eye off their kindred, their natural ally, with the Palestinians. By the way, to make their countries function, if you go to the Gulf, you see ever so many educated Palestinians running things from them. One little thing, and it's just pure anecdote, I was talking to a very well-established Egyptian friend in UK, and she was very nervous. We were in a discussion group, and she said, I'm very worried about the Arab world's attitude to the Palestinians. And she hinted she somehow felt in her water, a highly educated, sophisticated person, that she thought trouble was on its way. I'd love to get back to her and say, what made you think like that? She was really quite upset about it all. There are organisations which I know very well, like the Said Foundation with Wafik Said, which has supported Palestinian medicine, helping with Palestinian education. And the point that we heard from our Palestinian colleague it's not only about journalism, this is where the UN is in a terribly difficult and crucial situation. It runs 44 schools in Gaza, from which they have distributed from their bases their aid to 112,000 family units, maybe only families of one or two. But it's a staggering figure. A lot of the Palestinian population is now going to rely on that. An enormous proportion of the population has relied on aid. That's why you get the caution of Secretary-General Guterres. I mean, this is, as I said, it really does look like a wicked problem. Yeah. I can't see the way out, and I never felt like that. Curiously, just observing, looking at the Ukraine conflict, I don't have quite the sense of almost mental despair that I do over this.
It's an overused word, but it is an unprecedented situation in an area that's traumatised and had repeated conflicts, but never anything like this.
But if you've got so many Russian Jews, for instance, as well, does this not affect Russia?
Oh, Russia is deeply involved. It's bound to be, because Netanyahu has had a good relationship with Putin. But Israel has also maintained, particularly with the Jewish community, good relations with Ukraine. It's a very, very complicated thing. And in the middle of this, you have Iran. Iran supplies Hezbollah, which has given a lot of, historically, the military know-how to Hamas. Iran is now a big armourer and supplier to Russia in the Ukraine war.
Well, we should point out we'll be speaking to the Foreign Secretary at 8:45. He was saying last night, James Cleverly, that they will be reviewing aid to Palestine. We'll be asking him about that. But for now, Robert Fox, thanks very much indeed for all of your analysis.
Let's just show you a video that has horrified so many people and scared so many people from the attack on the music festival on Saturday. As emasculated Israeli communities, Noah Agramani was amongst those captured. You'll recognise her, and she was taken together with that gentleman there back to Gaza, and Noah's father has been speaking about his pain and anguish.
What can I say? My whole life since she was born, I've done my best to protect and to hug her and to support and love her. And now in this difficult moment, to at least encourage her. I couldn't reach out to tell her something like, Noah, cheer up. I saw her boyfriend. What difficult days, difficult days.
For his opinion, Johnny Gould. Johnny Gould is the host of a Jewish State podcast. Johnny, good morning to you. And there must be so much pain and so much anguish and so much angst and with all of this. I mean, any parent at all that would have witnessed that abduction of their daughter, it's just heartbreaking. And now people like Noah, she's held hostage if she's still alive and could be executed at any time in retaliation for the Israeli strikes. So how powerful is this human shield? What effect would this actually have? Will the Israeli forces take any notice that there are captives?
Well, listen, the IDF, Eamonn, is the most humane army in the world and attempts to warn Palestinians in their homes. This war is more existential and it's kicking off in a much bigger way. And let's not forget how this started on Saturday morning. Israel does not want this war. And one of the many reasons Israel doesn't want this war is that it affects Jewish people literally across the world. We saw an unbridled it started perhaps as a rally, but then it ended up as a bit of an unbridled people running amok across the West End. Try being a Jewish person going out in the West End last night. It would have been impossible. There was a vigil outside Downing Street for the Jewish community, which was well attended by Jewish and non-Jewish people. But the reality is for the Jewish community in London and in Manchester, in Birmingham and across the country is that we've got to go on the school run this morning and wear a little bit of protection, be wary of the extra security that will surround Jewish schools, synagogues, etc. This is a very, very serious situation for the Jewish community. And Rishi Sunak, Sadiq Khan and various other community leaders, political leaders are saying that the Jews across the country need protection, and they're absolutely right.
I know you've got children and you live in the capital. It's shocking in 2023 to be hearing from the Jewish community that they feel unsafe. We heard yesterday, didn't we, the head of the London Jewish Free School saying that kids this week didn't have to wear their blazers because it had the Star of David on it. There would be no detentions this week because they wanted children to go in groups on the buses so that they would feel safe. Now, the Prime Minister has come out unequivocally in support of Israel and of the Jewish community, and he's saying, not on my watch. How welcome has his response been?
The show of solidarity, and he turned up at Finchley Synagogue last night and made his position very clear. Sadiq Khan said the same thing. But if you look at the videos on social media last night, I've been posting some of them on my X feed. The issue of the police trying to deal with this mass rally gives it an air of respectability. Is almost impossible to police, rather to contain. But for Jewish people going out for a quiet evening meal or maybe going out to the theatre, they're not going to be wearing their yarmulkes or talking about the Israeli situation because they'll get run by a mob. This is London in the 21st century.
Forgive the question, but I have to ask it because just the discussions that we've had on the programme this morning from other contributors, and I want to give you the opportunity to respond to it. What would you say to those who claim that Israel's response with attacks going into Gaza amounts to war crimes?
Well, very simply, the Gazans, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad need to put down their weapons, because if they put down their weapons, there will be peace in the Middle East.
Okay.
As simple as that. As simple as that.
As simple as that.
People
as simple
are
as that.
very...
Look what happened.
Yeah.
Look what happened on Saturday morning. There are people waiting at the bus stop. There are people on a kibbutz waiting, waking up, going to have their breakfast, or children at a musical festival. What kind of enemy combatants are they? This is how it starts. Hamas showed who they were, and they're a bloodthirsty, genocidal cult. Leave Israel alone to build a progressive society. Put down your weapons. There will be peace. We need a reliable Palestinian leadership for which Israel can make peace. Time and time again, Israel has attempted to make peace. President Trump tried to do it through the Abraham Accords. It succeeded with the Gulf Arab countries. And now the Saudi Arabian plan, which was beginning to bear fruit. The Palestinians got scared. And now the Saudi Arabian leader, MBS, has told Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State of the United States, that for now, peace with Israel is off the table, and that is the biggest tragedy of the last 4 days.
Yeah.
Johnny Gould, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Appreciate it. 7:22 is the time to other news, and a cautiously confident Sir Keir Starmer has been speaking at the Labour Party conference. His big speech will be this afternoon.
Yeah, he says his party are on schedule to win the next general election. Yesterday, or in fact, actually, that was on Sunday, the Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, said the Labour Party will act as a stark contrast to the Conservatives.
Has never been so unified, so focused around one aim: to give Britain its future back. But the Tories also have one singular focus: to desperately cling on to power. That's why the Tories' Levelling Up project was dead on arrival. You cannot level up from the top down. The Tories only know how to centralise power and hold wealth where it benefits them.
So that was the Deputy on Sunday. The big boss is today. What's he got in store? Tom Harwood, our Deputy Political Editor, will hopefully give us an idea. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Yes, the leader of the Labour Party is coming up at 2 p.m. today to really set the tone for this conference. Of course, we heard yesterday from the Shadow Chancellor, the day before from the Deputy Leader, although I must say that the speeches so far at this conference have been playing things very safe, playing the old tunes and no doubt exciting the base here at the Labour Party conference, but with very little that's actually fresh or changing policy. And that's particularly interesting given the position that the Labour Party finds itself in the polls. They don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart. Really, what we might well see for the next 12 months before a likely autumnal general election is a steady as she goes policy from the Labour Party, not wanting to change all that much. Although that being said, one of the themes this afternoon from Sir Keir Starmer will be trying to answer this question: why Labour? The Labour Party seems to be buying into this idea that many pollsters seem to be backing up, that there isn't that much positive enthusiasm for the Labour Party. They are, of course, streets ahead in the polls, but mainly winning by default. The country seems to be saying that they don't want the Conservatives and are defaulting as things stand for the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer's task today is to try and set out a positive vision, a vision of policy in terms of why people might positively choose the Labour Party rather than just defaulting for it.
Can I ask you, Con?
Sorry, no.
I was just wanting to relate, I guess, this story to our top story today. We saw emotions spilling out when there were Palestinian protests or I don't know, what sort of in support of Palestine outside conference, and then we saw, I don't know if there were delegates attending the conference, but people were very cross about that. What's the mood there at Labour conference in relation to this Middle East conflict escalation?
There is a sharp divide between what happens just outside the secure zone of this conference and what happens inside the secure zone of this conference. Perhaps a few years ago, it might have been much the same inside and outside, but it seems that this year, the pro-Palestinian protesters, some might even question whether they sort of bleed into being to some extent pro-Hamas protesters with some of the words that we've heard being said, or at least morally ambivalent towards the actions of Hamas. Those people are not the kind of people that are walking around inside this year, but they do stand outside. We saw a big demonstration yesterday. We saw one delegate to this conference sort of stand and stand against those protesters and question why was he having to do that by himself? Why was no one else standing with him? I have to say there was quite an emotional moment for me yesterday when someone who's not a member of the Labour Party but was attending this conference just came up to me. She was almost in tears, talking about how she had been jostled and harassed on her way into this conference. It was really quite shocking. She was telling me how she had family in Israel and just could not believe how those people were behaving outside this conference. But I do have to stress that is very much people who aren't on the floor in the conference venue itself. It's some of those protesting outside.
All right, Tom, shocking to hear that. Thank you very much indeed. For now, we'll see you a little bit later on in the programme.
Now, listen, it's been a pretty miserable programme today with the type of news that we've got going. But we've got something that will make you feel happier. That's guaranteed to make you feel happier. And we'll show you what that is after this short break. But also after that...
we'll be debating, should we be honouring those who helped to free slaves? See you in a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, look, there's an item we're going to do towards the end of the programme after 9 o'clock today, which is really important, really interesting, because if you're feeling a bit down in the dumps, if you're feeling a bit abandoned and whatever, what should you do? The answer is you should surround yourself with family pictures, things that, well, I'm even smiling thinking about the sort of things that I have up in the house.
I can see, you get, when you smile and get sentimental, you get little tears in your eyes.
There's the whole family.
Oh, look,
there's my
Amelia.
Granddaughter there. These are pictures you should have. That's my.
Which one's Maggie?
Which one on the right? And look at those. That's my four other brothers.
Wow.
There's one. That's my daddy, and that was the carpet fan that we used to go around in. And that's the Queen. That's my mum. There, oh, that's my 3 kids who are now well in their 30s there now. But anyway, Isabel, what are we looking at with you?
Oh, this is my little brood. And actually, there's a sausage dog in there. That's Hector the cat. I have to include him in the family pictures because he's a newly acquired 11-week-old kitten.
Quite right.
That we're completely besotted with. But
it's
he does make me happy.
Yes. And the thing is that if you have pictures, memories, they implant and they reinforce childhood memories. And if those are good memories, they make you feel very, very happy. So we're talking about mental health and we're talking about why you should surround yourself with family pictures and things that just generally make you smile, OK?
That's a little bit later.
We're going to be doing that later on.
For now, we're going to be discussing the slave trade and the UK's involvement in it. And it's been a long-running debate, really, whether there should be statues erected in favour of those who pretty much made a huge fortune out of them, and many of them have been ripped down in our cities as those figures who benefited from slavery. But Colin Kemp is a semi-retired businessman, and he has proposed a £70,000 monument for Portsmouth, the home of the Royal Navy's West Africa Squadron, which freed more than 150,000 slaves over the course of 6 decades in the 19th century.
OK, the statue depicts a slave before abolition, a naval officer and a freed slave, and it could be based anywhere. It could be based in Bristol, could be based in Portsmouth. Here to debate this, social commentator Narinder Kaur with this, and well, we don't have a second guest.
Just me.
Oh, I didn't receive that message.
Well, I didn't receive that message either, but apparently we were told that. So, but anyway, Narinder, so I think you're going to be the villain of all of this then. So you don't believe...
You get me. You just get me. You only need me.
This wouldn't be money well spent as far as you're concerned.
Look, I think that he's entitled to put up this statue, but I think it's very misleading. I think the British have this great way of... as George Orwell once famously said, they're very hypocritical with their history of the British. And I think to put up this statue because this West African squadron, you don't get to make vast amounts of profit on the backs of suffering and genocide of black slaves and then say, well, let's give ourselves a pat on the back, actually, because we did help save 150,000. And I would also question the motives. So after 200 years of slavery, you then wake up one day and suddenly you're on a moral high horse.
Well, you could say better late than never, couldn't you?
No, you couldn't say better than late than then. I'd say that is completely the wrong thing to say, because actually you made all your money and suddenly it wasn't profitable anymore. And suddenly, actually, how will we look in the world? In the world, we want to look like we're on the moral high horse and we will try and end slavery. I'm not saying that the sailors who did die, yes. I'm saying that, you know, their motives were probably genuine. But I'd say in terms of the British motives, you made your money and now you want to pat on the back.
Well, we've done this in Belfast now. I wasn't even aware Belfast had any connection with slavery, but big port like Liverpool would be, or Newcastle or Glasgow.
Bristol.
Or and they've put up a picture of a guy I've never heard of in Belfast city centre. So we're all sort of aware now of our connection and how this guy abolished slavery. So there's a sort of feel-good factor around it.
Gosh, but that's just your white saviour guilt. It's a bit like a sword in your guilt for all the wrongs that were done. And actually, let's celebrate this one man. What about all the 3.4 million black slaves that were, and so many were killed, and therefore you now put up a statue of a white man.
This is the
and
same,
this kind of white saviour.
This is going to be the same row we're going to get with Gaza and Israel. It'll never be able to be solved because everybody will always go back in time and remember the wrongs that were done against their people.
But this isn't, see, that's the other thing, Eamonn. I think we go on this, well, that was hundreds of years ago. That's an excuse because guess what? We still have systematic racism in this country, and actually people are still suffering. In the Caribbean, how much poverty...
Would it not heal your little grandchildren or whatever when they come into the world? Would that not heal that you go back and you say, look, there was a good person and this horribleness existed in...
No, because the ramifications of slavery are still felt today. We have systematic racism and actually there's poverty in the Caribbean. They're poor. And guess what? People in this country are rich. And that's not right, because it's still felt today. We can't ignore this.
So what would appease things for you?
I think reparations. I think that the Caribbean countries...
Paying money to the Caribbean countries.
How can you not? How can you sit rich in your own house knowing you took from other people in an oppressive and disgusting manner? These people were treated terribly. You can't live your life thinking, well, it was hundreds of years ago. It's an excuse.
Well, she puts it very powerfully. Do you agree with her, Narinder Kaur, there?
They won't agree with me.
Well, there might be somebody. There might be somebody. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that.
And coming up, we're going through all the latest sport with Paul Coit, who is here with us in just a moment. Sorry.
I believe I'm here now.
Hello.
You didn't know I was even here. I crept up on you. That's what it is.
That's great.
Which is what Wayne Rooney looks like he's doing with Birmingham City, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean...
Look, what state are Birmingham in? I don't know these days. Are they well-funded? Were they sitting in the league?
They aren't. Well, they are now, because another American takeover. So, another American takeover. There's so many American millionaires and billionaires that are getting involved in football. Same thing with Birmingham City at the moment, which, if you're a fan, and all the problems that Birmingham City have had...
I'm not a fan of Americans eating into our traditional sport. We don't go out there and take over basketball or...
I'd say if we had the money, we probably would if we had the money to go over there and do it. But the thing is, let's say you're a Birmingham City fan.
Yeah.
Things are looking really bad. There's no money. It's been a disaster. It's been really badly run as far as the club's going and as far as the team's going. It's just going down and down. Then someone comes in with a huge amount of money and say we're going to invest in the team, and then make a start. You're not really going to be turning...
And Wayne has been out there getting experience with DC United as well. And
he has. Well, John Eustace, I talked about John Eustace yesterday. John Eustace is the current manager, or was the current manager up till yesterday, at Birmingham City. He's been through a lot of the problems. He'd been there for 15 months, and it's done pretty well considering. Kept them out of relegation, and they're now in sixth place as well in the Championship. But now the American, this is where you probably think, OK. So they've put a statement, said, because the board want to implement a winning mentality and culture at the club. So they've given John the boot. They're going for Wayne Rooney. Now, Wayne... his record as a manager, now, he had problems at Derby. They won 24, drew 22, lost 39. DC United, won 14, drew 14, lost 25.
Yes.
So he's a great name, and it all sounds very good for maybe if there's going to be a documentary.
Name, and he's got tremendous passion and obviously, tremendous skill. I mean, I don't negate his commitment in any way. Who's the other Northwest club? Is it Bolton? Who's been bought over by Americans?
Yeah, well,
is it Bolton or it's not Burnley? Is it? No, is it Burnley? It's Burnley, isn't it? Burnley.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it, Isabel?
It is.
Oh yeah, Burnley. I was thinking Wrexham, but what do I know?
There's always athletes. That's the thing is, there's always there's athletes involved. There's film stars involved. But really, a lot has begun. Well, I mean, you saw the documentary, didn't you, about Wrexham? And there's a lot to be said for that. I think all of a sudden they're thinking, you know what, I want a piece of that. So I think everybody's coming in from the States and thinking they can have a big
wherever it
success
is,
story.
if it is Burnley, my apologies if I'm wrong here.
No,
with
it's
this.
Burnley. It's Burnley.
But the guy there, that has not been easy for him. The American that's involved there, and he's brought his family over, and it's tough, and you wonder, why would you want to be part of that? And always with the Americans, you want to be part of it because cash, because money.
Yeah.
And they see the holy grail for them is not to have relegation.
Absolutely.
That's what they want.
Absolutely.
That's what they want.
That's the first thing to stave off. And then should things go well, we'll see. I mean, people look at Brighton and clubs like that and look at how well things are going for them. So if it's well run,
and Villa's
things
going
can
well
go
at the
things
minute.
can go very well. And Villa, of course, new owners as well. So we'll see how we go.
But the idea, rule change, they want no relegation. And we as fans, I think we do want relegation.
Absolutely.
Unless you're somebody like, well, no, I can't say that about Spurs. They're top of the league.
No, they're number one.
They're number one.
Where we are, we're just up there.
Don't be
Thanks,
jealous.
Paul.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Paul. What do you want to see? Who do you want to see running your clubs? Gone are the days that British people... There used to be butchers and bakers.
Who was it that texted you over the week? Well, don't tell me who it was, but what did they say about you off the back of the Beckham documentary?
I've been watching the Beckham documentary, Eamonn, and I've come to the conclusion that you are really just a mini Alex Ferguson. You think like him, you act like him.
I can't disagree, working up close and personal with you.
You threw a hairdryer at me yesterday, and I could never understand. I couldn't understand what was going on. Where did he get that hair? He's got a box of them. That's where it comes from. Sir Alex, that's where it comes from. Or maybe the other way around.
Goodness, and our commiserations to him at this time, Sir Alex, with the loss of his wife, Lady Cathy. Very, very sad.
Do you think you'd be any good at managing a football club?
Well, Sir Alex told me that you couldn't do it nowadays, not the way that he did
there you
it.
go.
Anyway, because they all have counsellors and they all have, I don't know what else, people you go to for their mental health and all sorts of things. You just can't shout at anybody anymore. It's terrible.
And you're out then.
Well, that's me.
That's the end for you.
I don't mean it in a caring way.
Of course, I know, caring, loving way, trying to get the best.
I am. I mean, my wife would say to me that I am like a football manager, that I would be suddenly saying, what are you doing that for? Why are we doing this? But as soon as the person scores a goal, I love them after that. It's all forgotten. I never
do what I want. There's no problem.
I never hold on to anything.
Why don't they get it?
When are you going to learn that?
Do as I say, not as I do.
Look, you see, Narinda's the sort of guest I like. She's just, just right up my
I'd so much
street.
to say about that Beckham documentary. Another show.
What?
I think Beckham comes across arrogant, and they seem to have amnesia considering all the history of what they did wrong. It was no accountability, and they went for Glenn Hoddle, and that was unfair. He wasn't there to stick up for himself.
We were saying that yesterday.
It was wrong. They really went for it, and he took no accountability for his own wrongs throughout the whole... Even his affair, he took no accountability.
He could come out on the airwaves anytime, always welcome.
Miranda, we must have you talking about all of this. Amazing. Right, so one of the things we're talking about after the break is labelling processed foods as addictive. They are so bad for you. I mean, says me, the chief connoisseur of processed foods. But anyway, next on Headline Makers.
Oh, the jammy.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Right, going through the headlines today is Isabel. She's devouring everything, but in her absence we'll have Carol McGiffin and we'll have former Labour advisor James Schneider. And you know, James, I just would like to start with you. We're going to touch on the Financial Times very shortly, but it looks like a good conference from Labour. Now, I know you're more on the Corbin side of things, but you must look and say, this lot are electable.
So I was up in Liverpool at Labour's National Convention, and they are certainly on course to win the next election. They've pursued quite...
Well, the Tories are on course to lose.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah, no. That was exactly going to be my my point. They've pursued a strategy that's in the Labour leadership. They've pursued a strategy of doing as little as possible to just stand next to the Tories and say, do you really want more of them? And after 13 years where most people are less well off, that is a strategy to win. Now, the problem is if you want to see serious change in the country or a real engagement with the crises that we face, winning by default doesn't give you much of a mandate to do anything.
Oh, it does. First is first and second is nowhere, doesn't it? Winners are winners.
No, it gets you into office.
Yes.
But does it give you the power to make any changes? Let's take, for example, this story I'm looking at in the
Financial
FT.
Times, yeah.
Yes, Labour seeks partnership with business. The Rachel Reeves has been setting out very clearly that Labour is not going to raise any taxes on big business, on the highest earners in society, on any wealth taxes.
And to get a rubber stamp from...
And they get a rubber stamp...
Mark Carney.
And they get a rubber stamp from Mark Carney, which is unsurprising because they've decided to be Capital's B team. The A team have done a terrible job, so they can't be supported, so they will transfer support over to the Labour Party to try to manage the situation. The problem is Labour now doesn't have any policies, or doesn't have very many policies, that would deal with the problems that we're facing, that would set back the 13 years of falling living standards that we've had in this country, where public services are worse, and more people, most people are worse off than they were.
I thought Rachel Reeves, I don't know what you thought, Carol, yesterday, but she sounded like a chancellor. She's the former governor of the Bank of England saying these are the people that mean business. No?
Yeah, Mark Carney, though.
The Cary Grant of the financial world.
Yeah, no, I don't know. No, I can't take any of them seriously. They're all the same. They just have different faces. That's it. They're all saying the same thing. I can't listen to Keir Starmer. I can't actually listen to him even speak. But I do not have any hope at all for Labour if they win, or the Tories if they lose, or whatever's going to happen, because everything will just carry on along the same path, and we know that. It's all words.
You could have had Jeremy Corbyn last time round. Would it have been any better under him, or have we yet to see whoever will take the mantle?
Well, at least he was a proper lefty. I mean, he was, proper left-wing, and you kind of need that contrast. You need left and you need right, but they're all in the middle.
So what were you saying earlier today, Isabel, about America having one party, one political idea
it's
with
a
two
divided
parties?
democracy, but it just creates congestion and, has produced these...
But we're getting that way here, aren't we?
Yeah, it's increasingly like that. But I did think it was interesting yesterday from Rachel Reeves that actually she was kind of channeling her inner Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah,
using a lot of the same sort of phraseology and sort of, economy-centric rhetoric. I mean, she's Shadow Chancellor, but it seemed to go down well at conference anyway.
What about the public, though? I mean, are the public actually watching that and just thinking, yeah, that's great, yeah, she's...
The polls seem to say so.
Margaret Thatcher, and I believe they're going to make my life better. I don't think so, somehow. I think the public are despairing.
You don't think so?
Well, I think if you look at the polling, most of Labour's polling lead is down to people hating the Tories and thinking that they've done a very bad job, rather than straightforward enthusiasm for Labour, which is why, for example, Starmer's leadership ratings are not that high. When their focus groups and polling, they ask about them, they say we don't really know what they stand for. It's because right now they are set to win and win handsomely, but it is by default. It is not because people are saying, yes, we're excited about what they're saying.
Carol, we'll go to the Daily Mail. Trusting... What is this about Amazon and Alexa?
Yeah, this is really worrying, actually. There was a survey, a bit of a survey done by researchers from Oxford and Stanford University, who basically asked people how they felt about these home listening devices, like Alexa and Echo and all these other... I mean, there's quite a few of them now. And people were beginning to sort of treat them as though they're like a member of the family, referring to them as he and she.
And children in particular.
Yeah.
My kids have grown up with Alexa, and they love to say things like, I love you, Alexa, and then it prompts a reaction, thanks for singing, I love you, and she starts singing back, and they find out...
Stop it!
No. Seriously, this is what our children do. It's just set it off in people's homes across the country. Try it. But,
I honestly think...
it's fun.
So you say, I love you, Alexa?
Yeah. That is so wrong.
No.
It's wrong.
It's
I
just
think
a game
anyone who
for the
has one of
kids.
these in their home is completely insane, because they're there for... They've fallen for it, frankly.
I agree. I'm not a big fan.
They are.
If I have them in my home, I don't use them. I would have initially got them and thought, this is a lot of rubbish.
But you've got to get them out. You've got to take them out the house.
Take them out. But you know what I find is this little thing. Sorry, just show me this.
Yeah, that's
thing
just
here.
as bad.
This, oh my word, it's like amusing to me that I will say anything. I'll say, oh, I've got a terrible pain in my knee. And then all these adverts come up with...
it's not amusing to me.
Yes, do you find that amusing, or do you find that terrifying?
Creepy.
Extremely creepy that we are giving huge amounts of power to unaccountable companies to know so much about us.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the technology is bad or anything like that, but the problem is, if you give people unaccountable power, history shows us they don't use it in our interests.
Right.
Everything like that is sold to you as, like James was saying out there, convenience. And people go, oh, OK, then, and then they adopt it. But it's not about convenience.
Progress, as my husband patronisingly tells me. Oh, it's technology, move with the times, darling.
It's
and I'm
all
like, I don't
about
want
control.
it.
People go, those things are not listening to you all the time. They only listen when you say Alexa. Oh, well, how did they hear you say Alexa?
No, anything and everything, the weird things that pop up. on my phone. I couldn't be talking about these things.
No, like jammy dodgers, like we just discussed. Because we need to really quickly mention these, because we teased it earlier, Carol, and when you're talking about convenience, a lot of people justify processed food through convenience. What are the Mail saying about it today?
Well, apparently they're going to start putting warnings, like a warning to say that these foods, highly processed foods, can be addictive. Well, you know, it's kind of trying to, shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. It's too late. People are addicted to this stuff. And we know from certain things that we've seen on television, documentaries, that fast food is deliberately made addictive so that they can keep their customers for life. And they don't refer to them as customers, users. They are users.
Also, my friend Julia Bradbury, the TV presenter, sent me an Instagram last night, which just showed what looked like tubs of Angel Delight, hundreds of tubs of Angel Delight, strawberry flavour. But it wasn't. It was meat. It went into an oven, and then so it was reconstituted meat. And then you could then carve it. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. We'll have more disgusting things to talk about. Did you hear that, Alexa? And remember, Alexa, I love you. Right? We're going to be back right after this. Spread a little love.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, good to see you. Just creeping up to 8 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 10th of October.
Yeah, thank you for your company, wherever you're joining us from. You're tuned in to Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that enormous force will be used against Hamas as the bombing of Gaza has continued overnight. 200 targets have been hit. Israel has begun a complete siege off the Gaza Strip.
Police forces across the UK are on high alert with a rise in reports of hate crimes against Jewish communities. Last night, 3 people were arrested during pro-Palestinian protests outside the Israeli embassy in London. This morning, the embassy has been boarded up. Rishi Sunak has restated the UK support for Israel to deal with terrorism.
Keir Starmer set to deliver his keynote speech later at the Labour Party conference. We're expecting him to say Labour needs to be in power to fix broken Britain. Let's go to Catherine Foster, who'll explain that much better than me.
Yes, Labour in buoyant mood here in Liverpool, looking forward to Keir Starmer's speech. He's expected to promise to build lots of houses and promise a decade of national renewal if they get elected.
And Greg Dewhurst will have your forecast.
Hello there, good morning. We've got some heavy rain, Met Office warnings in force across western parts of Scotland today. Brighter skies eventually further south. Find out all the details coming up in the programme.
Thank you, Greg. Greg with your weather forecast. Paul with your sport.
Yes, England have started well against Bangladesh in the Cricket World Cup, which is underway at the moment, and the Euros will be coming back to these shores very soon.
You mean they're coming home?
I wanted to avoid that. I didn't want to dare say they're coming home.
All right. Okay.
But they are.
They are
coming home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
they're
good.
coming home. Football's coming home.
And you can join in any of our discussions throughout the course of the morning. Thank you for all of your emails and your tweets this morning. Keep them coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Right, folks, our top story this morning is Israel has imposed a complete siege of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, that means no power, no food or gas, everything closed. That was the message from the Israeli Defence Minister. In response, Hamas has threatened to start killing individual civilian hostages for every Israeli bombing of Gaza.
The death toll continues to rise on both sides. Nearly 1,000 people have died in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack, including 260 who were killed by Hamas gunmen at a peace music festival.
And since Israel began bombing Gaza in response, approximately 687 civilians in Palestine have also died. Israel says it has finally sealed the security cordon with Gaza after the breach by Hamas militants on Saturday, after hitting 200 militant targets overnight.
Tensions remain high. Demonstrations have broken out across the world. Let's look at this. This is footage of pro-Israel rallies. These have been held on the streets of Chile. They're also in Paris, Brussels and Colombia.
And there have also been pro-Palestinian protests here in London, sites the likes of which we haven't seen before, with the Israeli embassy having to be boarded up. Well, the Metropolitan Police are reporting hate crimes against the Jewish community, with the Israeli embassy in London having to take protective action.
Now, speaking at the United Synagogue in London, Rishi Sunak said attempts to stir up community tensions will not be tolerated in Britain.
I know that at moments like this, when the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain. Not in our country. Not in this century.
Here in Britain, and the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, the UK and the United States have released a joint statement.
Yeah, in it they express their steadfast and united support to the State of Israel.
Last night, Westminster was lit up in colours of the Israeli flag. More than 10 Britons are believed to be dead or missing. but the Foreign Secretary says he won't speculate on the number of nationals involved.
And the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says that the UK is working closely with Israel to locate any British nationals and establish if they are safe or not.
It will be an anxious time for many families who have loved ones in the region. It's a quite complex situation on the ground, so we are working very closely with our Israeli counterparts to establish the status of any British nationals on the ground. That work is underway as we speak. But for anyone who does have family or friends in the region, the most important thing for them to do is follow the Foreign Office advice, but also the advice of the Israeli Home Command.
Well, the bombing campaign of Gaza has continued overnight. The number of buildings destroyed that Israel say are Hamas targets, and throughout this we've been speaking to Plesta Al-Akwad, who is a journalist based in Gaza overnight. Her home was destroyed by Israeli airstrikes, and just earlier she updated us from the hospital she was sheltering in.
The situation, it's horrible in Palestine, in Gaza specifically. Also the media coverage, like until now, many journalists are dead, many journalists are injured. Around 10, last time I checked, around 10 journalists, they have lost their lives. So no words literally can describe the situation. The last thing that the Israeli bombed was the telecom company. So can you imagine? That explains why we don't have internet, we don't have electricity. Like even to talk to your friends, journalists, other people that you know, to ask them what's happening or something, you can't do anything.
The Israeli Defense Force are saying that 200 buildings have been destroyed overnight.
Well, let's go now to the journalist Jotam Confino, who's live for us in Tel Aviv. Good morning to you, Jotam. Thank you very much for being with us. We've heard from inside Gaza today, and we've had this update from the IDF about the strikes overnight. There have been concerns from the United Nations about the siege of the area, the cutting off of water and of power and of supplies. What is the mood in Israel? The public will demand no less, presumably, of Benjamin Netanyahu.
That is exactly the mood. A lot of people, especially in southern Israel, people who have had relatives killed or people who are held hostage inside Gaza, they have simply said that they want to see Gaza turn to rubble. They want to eradicate Hamas, and they don't care how many people die in this attack. And this is, of course, an expression of frustration. It's something that a lot of Israelis, they share that opinion. They do think that it's justified to collectively punish people in Gaza, simply because they're so outraged about this massive onslaught, this unprecedented terror attack with Hamas members going from door to door and slaughtering civilians. But of course, there are also other voices who are maybe calling for more restraint, who are maybe also saying that the children of Gaza should not be paying a price for this. They should not be without electricity and food.
OK, interesting. This is one part of it, the siege. What else do you think might happen in terms of these hostages? Because we've heard that there will be retaliatory action from Hamas for every bombing of Gaza that is not notified, that they are not notified of if they are in civilian areas. That must be a huge challenge then for the Israeli military.
Every minute counts right now, and Israel is under immense pressure right now to figure out what to do, how to get these hostages freed. And they are in close contact with other countries, of course, who also have their citizens held in Gaza, such as the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany. Many, many countries have the people held hostage in Gaza. So this is really a huge headache for Israel. First of all, Israel needs to figure out if it wants to negotiate with Hamas and potentially release thousands of Palestinian prisoners, or if it will try and free the hostages by launching a ground invasion and simply try and free them that way. But if they do, it will cost many, many lives, both Palestinians, Israeli soldiers, and potentially also hostages. It's very, very difficult to operate in a densely populated area such as Gaza.
Final point, Joachim, what about the hostages there? We've got headlines covering most of the newspapers here. One hostage will die for every Gaza strike.
Still hasn't happened. It is a threat issued by Hamas yesterday. We do know that Hamas has said that 4 Israeli hostages have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. I'm just stressing in Israeli airstrikes. So that's, of course, a huge headache for Israel, also a disaster. But no, they haven't started executing, but maybe they will. Hamas threats, sometimes they follow through on it, sometimes they don't. We also hear that sometimes when they say we're going to hit Tel Aviv at 8 o'clock tonight, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It remains to be seen if they will start executing.
Can you just update us finally on those pockets of fighting within Israel that we were reporting on yesterday in several different locations? Are those largely under control now and under Israeli control?
They are. I just got confirmed from the military during a briefing with international journalists that Israel has now, first of all, they have control over the border, and they also have control, relative control, they say, over the border communities adjacent to the Gaza border. And but they do confirm that several terrorists are still roaming around and hiding in Israeli territory. So it is not 100% under control, but much more so than, for example, 24 hours ago.
Joachim Confino, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate your analysis. We're going to show you now a video that has horrified anybody who's seen it since events of last Saturday at the music festival. As Hamas raided Israeli communities and a music festival, Noah Agramani was amongst those captured and brought back to Gaza, and her father has been speaking to reporters.
What can I say? My whole life, since she was born, I've done my best to protect and to hug her and to support and love her. And now in this difficult moment, to at least encourage her. I couldn't reach out to tell her something like, Noah, cheer up. I saw her boyfriend. What difficult days, difficult days.
Difficult days indeed. Let's get the analysis now of Con Coughlin. He's Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor at the Daily Telegraph. Welcome back to the programme. Always good to see you, Con. Difficult days is the best way to sum it up, isn't it? And it feels as though the worst could yet be to come. Certainly for years now, authorities have really tried to avoid any sort of ground incursion into Gaza. We've seen the troops amassing on the border there. Do you think it is inevitable? And how on earth is that going to work when it comes to civilians?
Well, good morning to you. I think, first of all, yes, all the indications are that Israel is preparing for ground offensive. And I think after the appalling events of the last few days, the Israeli people want to see the end of Hamas. They're sick and tired of being intimidated by this Iranian-backed group. This has been going on for years, so it is a challenge. And I think the Israeli military commanders will be very aware that the Hamas militants, the terrorists, will have been preparing for an Israeli incursion into Gaza, and there just could be the most enormous trap being set for the Israelis. They have made previous attempts to conduct ground offensives in Gaza, and the last time they tried it, they got a bloody nose. And I think the stakes are a lot higher now because a lot of other people will be watching what's going on in Gaza, Iran, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, etc. So this really still has the possibility, the potential, to escalate even further from the terrible situation we find ourselves in now.
And we know that Israel takes a very clear line on its people. If anybody is at risk, security is absolutely what Israel is all about. And they will do whatever it takes, whether that means negotiating with hostage takers, whether that means prisoner swaps, whether that means large sums of money, or, as discussed, troops going in there. And that's certainly, a very hard and clear defined position from Israel on that.
It is, and when Israel gets into this mindset, it's pretty unstoppable. I mean, I remember 40 years ago, I was in Lebanon after the Israelis invaded Lebanon to destroy the PLO, which they basically did. There was enormous amount of international criticism, but the Israelis just pressed ahead. And I suspect we're in that sort of zone now. I think the Israeli government has been shocked by its own intelligence failures, by the scale of the murderous assault of the Hamas terrorists. And they will want, in old-fashioned biblical terms, revenge. And I don't think anyone's going to stop them. And I think you've seen with the overnight declaration of support from Western leaders, I think the Israeli government will draw encouragement from this, and they will press ahead with their ultimate objective, which is the complete destruction of Hamas.
I looked to the words of Antonio Guterres, who was walking on eggshells yesterday trying to recognise the grievances on both sides, but he was at pains to stress that it is illegal to involve civilians in warfare. Where does this play out? And we've got the Foreign Secretary coming on the programme in around half an hour's time. I mean, he's very clear that we will support Israel. If they want military support, we will be there. But where is the line? Is it at any cost that the Allies will support Netanyahu in their, you know, effectively standing up for themselves and defending themselves against this terror attack?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think that will be in the minds of Israeli commanders and politicians, because, as we've seen, even after the appalling events of the weekend, public opinion outside Israel can be pretty fickle, and we've already seen a lot of support being displayed for the Palestinians. And of course, you know, in conflict, you do avoid civilians. The Israeli military is a very professional, Western-style organization, which understands the international laws of warfare. But as I said, this is going to be a very difficult operation. And we've seen before in other conflicts in the Middle East that sometimes, you know, you've got military groups operating in civilian areas, which makes it very difficult to distinguish between the terrorists and the civilians. I'm not in any way condoning killing civilians, but I'm just trying to set out what the challenges will be. And I think you're right. I think if the Israelis don't get this right and lots of civilians are killed, then international support will quickly erode.
We'll leave it there. Colin Gloughlan, thank you very much indeed. He's the Defence and Foreign Affairs editor of the Daily Telegraph. And as we wake up here in Britain, you can see there the state of still clouds of smoke escaping in Gaza. It looks like a peaceful scene, but it is not. It is not. 2.3 million people crowded into that little space of land there as well, and they are now under siege.
Yeah, and we were hearing in the last few moments that the Israeli Defence Force confirmed that they have destroyed 200 buildings in Gaza overnight.
Right. A judicial review has been made against the Home Office challenging the decision to house asylum seekers on the Bibi Stockholm barge docked in Portland in Dorset.
And papers will be put before a judge to decide if the case can go ahead. And we're joined now by a national reporter, Theo Jacumba. In fact, we're not joined by Theo Jacumba. We are joined by international human rights lawyer David Hay. Good morning to you. Bring us up to speed on this legal case then.
Hi, good morning to you both. Well, as you said, there's a judicial review ongoing, about to be launched. Well, it has been launched. It's in the courts today, and the judge will decide whether or not the government effectively has used effectively a wheeze and loopholes to avoid what normally would be planning laws so that they can proceed with the Bibi Stockholm. Now, there's lots of court battles on at the moment in various different courts about the various policies, whether it's Rwanda or this one. This has been brought by an individual. She's actually the mayor of Portland, although she's doing this in her personal capacity. And it's effectively what she's saying is that the government has circumvented what would be normal planning rules by using this barge. And because of that, things like environmental impact, the impact on health and the impact on equality, things that you would normally anticipate any planning development to have been avoided. And that will be decided whether or not the case is strong enough to go to a full hearing.
Parallel with the Supreme Court hearing, day 2 there, where the government's trying to appeal against the decision to say it is lawful to get those flights out to Rwanda, and we're not expecting those decisions until November. But the optics of these 2 concurrent court cases just goes to show how difficult this has been for the government on one of their 5 pledges to try and stop the boats.
Well, absolutely, Isabel, and that's not to forget we've also got Scampton, and we've also got a judicial review in there and more planning issues there. So it's complete court chaos in the government's immigration policy, and this is a little bit different to the others because this is local residents. This isn't the European Court, this isn't the Supreme Court, this is local residents saying the government has circumvented normal planning rules which protect local areas, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, whether or not this will have much impact because the barge isn't currently being used, but it may have impact going forward if the government was looking at putting other barges in other areas.
Thank you very much, David. We've got to leave it there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
We can now go to Theo Chikumba. Let's go. Let's go then. Let's find him there. So what have you got to tell us?
Yo, a very good morning to you. Well, as your previous guest just highlighted just a few moments ago, the Mayor of Portland, Carolyn Parks, is coming to essentially get a green light to take on the Home Office. But we can touch on some of the other things which she has raised as concerns. She says local residents have not been able to challenge this decision, seeing the barge in their area in this normal way that they would do through Dorset Council. So she's fighting on them on behalf of that issue, and also she says the Home Office is avoiding the usual standard legal protections such as the laws around overcrowding. Now, if we remember, we saw those pictures back in July when the barge arrived in Portland, and then at the beginning of August, on the 7th, we saw asylum seekers move in onto the barge, but only after 4 days we saw them being taken off after Legionella bacteria was found in the water system. And over the last few months, we've seen objections from some of those local residents, but others supporting it, saying this is the right move. But it has caused a lot of contention, particularly between various groups in that area. But from 10:30 today, the hearing will be taking place where the Mayor will be in attendance to see whether she can get a green light to challenge the Home Office.
Thank you, Theo. Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your views coming in. Your discussion in Headline Makers earlier, what an excellent discussion. Violence begets violence. How true. War crimes are always wrong. Terrorism is always wrong. Phil says, is it not possible to declare a 6-month moratorium on street protests? I realise protesting is a democratic right, but a small break would give the UK some breathing space.
There's lots of other messages this morning. We were talking about the slave trade. Carol says slavery still exists today and it will always exist while greed rules. Destroying statues and trying to wipe out the past won't help. We need to remember what's gone before. Thank you for sending in your views, and we'll try to reflect some more of those a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to check in with Greg Dewhurst, who has news of our weather.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We've got heavy rain across Scotland through today, bringing some disruption. There'll be some spells of hazy sunshine elsewhere, but it is quite a grey start this morning, some low cloud mist and fog, slowly burning back as we go through the morning, but taking its time. We can see the heavy rain across northwest Scotland, this slowly pushing its way southeastwards. A Met Office rain warning in force here, 20 to 50 millimetres of rain possible, leading to some local flooding in places. Cloudier further southwards across northern parts of England, but the best of the hazy sunshine once again. Central and southern parts of England and Wales, 23, possibly 24 degrees. That heavy rain continues to slowly push its way southeastwards through Tuesday evening. The Met Office warning eases during the evening time as that rain clears, showers following, and then rain turning heavy as it moves into Wales, into the Midlands during the early hours. Southeastern areas staying generally dry. Temperatures turning fresher across the north, single figures here, holding up 14 to 16 Celsius further south. So this cloudy wet zone across central parts of the UK Wednesday morning, this generally slowly moving southeastwards as we head through the day. Quite a muggy feel to things here. Brighter across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, but quite a cool blustery northwesterly breeze here with some showers filtering in. Temperatures here lower than recent days, 12 to 15, up to around 21 towards the southeast. See you soon.
Now, look, it is Keir Starmer's big day at the Labour conference. His national campaign coordinator will be with us next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Go through what's happening sports-wise with Paul Coyte. Do you mind if I start with a dog?
Do you want to start with the dog?
Yeah.
I like the dog.
Right.
I think there should be more dogs in football. There was actually a dog that was at Kenilworth Road for the Luton Spurs game.
Yeah.
It was a very nice dog. But this is something that happened in the Mexican League, the Mexican Second Division. Now, here we are. There's a dog running on the pitch. The dog thinks it's all over. Now, the dog, it's Ali Brijas Oaxaca against Dorados, which is a second division game. Not that it makes any difference, but there's plenty of people there. And there's the dog. Dog runs on the pitch. Who takes their dog to football?
But who has a lead to entrap it with, snare it with, because that's what we saw. Look,
the dog is good. I love the fact the dog's got the ball. So not only is the dog running around, they're chasing the dog with the ball. And those size 5 footballs, trust me, it's not easy to get your chops around that, which the dog has done. So they're sort of like a half-hearted chase. The dog is wagging his tail. The dog is having a great time. The players are not really getting involved, are they? They're probably a bit nervous about the whole situation. What's the guy with the string? I mean, that concerns me a little.
But as you say, there's a regulation size to football. In that case, it's size 5.
Yes, it's a size 5 football. So, and the dog only has size 3 chops, so you can't really grab onto it. But you know what? It was the old days. You used to get dogs at football all the time, so I like to see such a thing.
What else have you got?
I got the UEFA. Well, UEFA are meeting today, so we're talking about Euro 28 and where it's going to be, and they will announce the winning candidate a little later today, and there's only one candidate, and that is the United Kingdom and Ireland, who have bid jointly for the Euros. The only other competitor was going to be Turkey, although then they pulled out and decided they're going to go for the next one with Italy. So it is going to be announced. We hope it is going to be Great Britain and Ireland. That's how we assume, because we're the only ones in it, although knowing the way that some of these footballing, shall we say, FIFA, UEFA, they'll probably open it up and say Euro 28 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. But it's actually supposed to be. England have 28 matches. Scotland, Wales and Ireland will have 6 matches. Northern Ireland will have 5 matches at Casement Park, which is still not quite finished yet. And the way they're going to do the qualification process as well is because usually if you host the tournament, you automatically qualify. This time, it looks as if there's only going to be 2 qualification places. So that's how they're going to do it, but everybody's going to have to qualify.
Thank you, my friend. We've got the Shadow Chancellor to the Duchy of Lancaster standing by.
Yeah, I was trying to quote his old title there. Sorry, he was moved in the recent reshuffle. But welcome to the programme. Very good morning to you, Pat McFadden. We're expecting to hear from your boss today. He's taking the stage at Labour conference. What will he be saying? I see the front of the Times talking about houses inspired by the Georgians.
Yeah, we are very keen on building more houses and making the dream of home ownership real for the next generation of people, because it's become far too difficult. And what we're talking about today is not just building new houses, but building new communities. That's why we're talking about new towns. It's not just about a place to live. It's about a GP surgery, a primary school, the transport links, the businesses that make up a community. That's what we're talking about today, and that's the kind of policy that's going to be at the centre of Keir Starmer's speech today.
The relationship you have with business is important to you.
Yes, the relationship with business is important. We're clear that for Britain to become more prosperous, we've got to generate more wealth. Governments alone can't do that. We work very closely with business. Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, myself, Johnny Reynolds, our business spokesperson. We want this to be a good country to invest in. It's not been an attractive enough investment destination in recent years, partly because of political chaos, no sense of a plan. So Keir will be setting out a long-term plan today for how we want to build the economy, how we want to generate that wealth, because frankly, that's the only way we're going to be able to fund the public services that we need in the future.
He's also a big fan of trying to increase devolution around the UK, but we've seen how plans to build on Greenbelt or expand areas are often blocked at a local level. Do the two things work together, this idea of these new towns, these new developments and turbocharging growth this way with increased devolution?
I think any government that gets elected doesn't have to rip everything up that a previous government has done. And you've got more devolution in England in recent years with the creation of mayors and combined authorities and so on. We think that that is working quite well. We want to build on it to pass more powers to local areas over things like planning, over skills, over local transport. There's a good argument for doing this. We want to build on what's been done over the past 10 years in this situation and get more local powers to local communities. I think that's the way to go.
Go on. I wanted to ask you about the protests yesterday outside the conference in Liverpool. You'll have seen the pictures, lots of people there in support of the Palestinians, which what we've seen has caused offence, not least to those in the Jewish community who have been reporting feeling under threat. And we've seen the Prime Minister coming out very much saying, not on my watch, and standing with Israel. Do you think it's been appropriate to have those sorts of protests? Some people reporting having to walk a gauntlet of protesters before being able to get inside there.
The Labour Party position on what's happened at the weekend is very clear. This was an appalling, unprovoked terror attack on Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself. It has a right to get its hostages back, and it has a right to use force to do so. We stood in silence, in solidarity with the people of Israel at the conference yesterday, and I'm very confident that Keir Starmer will address this issue in his speech and make clear our view that Israel has a right to defend itself, a right to get its hostages back, and a right to use force to do so.
OK, Pat McFadden, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, thank you.
Still to come, as London's rental market is pushing people out of the city. That story and other headline makers in the papers and online next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best.
Bellissima.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, going through the newspapers is Carol McGiffin and James Schneider, who will give their take on various things. And I'd like to begin with the Jimmy Savile. If any of you saw the Jimmy Savile drama last night, Carol.
I thought it was on tonight. Was it on what?
No, it was last night. It was last night.
No, I've got absolutely zero desire to watch this. I'm not interested in that man even slightly. And I think I'm pretty certain I haven't watched it and I'm not going to watch it. But I wonder if the BBC have actually included a giant section of their own complicity and blindness when it came to Jimmy Savile, because there was a massive cover-up. There wasn't a person in the industry who didn't know what he was like, personally. And also, you've got this friendship with the King now, Prince Charles as he was at the time. I mean, he's just a loathsome person. And being played by Steve Coogan is also not a very, not a very watchable person. I see him as being pretty revolting as well. So you've got these two people. You've got a loathsome person playing an even more loathsome person.
Yeah, I mean, in Coogan's defence, he hasn't committed any crimes.
No, he hasn't committed any crime, but it doesn't make it any easier to watch for me.
Did you watch it or have a view on this?
I haven't watched it. Obviously, I mean, it's probably got the same. We've all got the same view on Jimmy Savile and his disgusting crimes. I mean, I probably won't watch it, but I think it's completely fine for the BBC to do it. But I take Carol's point very firmly that I hope that part of the script is about the complicity of large parts of our media and huge parts of our establishment. I mean, that's really, I think, what this story is about. They're the heinous crimes of one man, and then there's the system that allowed that to go on for so long.
And is it too soon, I wonder? And like a horrible reminder that he just got away with everything because he died? I mean, it's just awful.
I think we should be reminded of that, to be honest. The fact that he got, that he got away with it all is something that, because, it's not like there aren't crimes that take place today, and scrutiny on him and his actions and the actions of those that allow that to happen should hopefully help for greater protections today.
Carol, English wine, hotter weather boosts growth prospects for English winemaker.
Yeah, this is great news, actually, because I don't know if you've ever tried English wine, but it's very, very good, isn't it? Stupidly expensive, though, I have to say. It would be good if they could make more and make it a bit cheaper. But it's good. But obviously they're crediting climate change for the good weather that we've had this year, because there's going to be a bumper crop. So maybe they will be able to make more, because I live in France, and I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever seen, and I don't think you would ever see English wine in France. They're quite protectionist with their wine. And I don't think it's the English are being protectionist about the sales of their wine. I just don't think they have enough of it. And not enough is known about it, because a lot of people just think, oh, English wine, ugh. But it's not. It's absolutely brilliant. It's excellent. I think the champagne, one of the champagnes won an award, and the French were absolutely apoplectic about it. The fact that and it's not champagne.
You're not allowed to call it.
Not even allowed to call it champagne. Sparkling wine. It won some big prize to say that it was better than actual French champagne. So yeah, I applaud them.
Right, let's go to the situation in Gaza Strip, James. We couldn't applaud anything that's going on there at the moment. You come at this from a perspective of being pro-Palestinian, because you were a former advisor to
I'm not in favour of human rights and dignity for all people because I was an advisor to anybody else. It's not I'm particularly pro-Palestinian or particularly pro-anything. I'm against war crimes and pro-dignity and justice and people's rights being carried out. And what we see across the papers today is, broadly speaking, cheerleading for Israeli war crimes which were announced by the Israeli government in response to atrocities that were carried out. And violence begets more violence. And the British state is now in support of Israeli war crimes. There are British bombs and British bullets and British diplomatic cover which are aiding these crimes against an oppressed people. And you know, that is the situation that we have.
Yeah, well, we just heard from the Labour Party there, who even they were saying that they defend Israel's right to defend itself, following on from...
What is defending yourself about turning a open-air prison of 2.3 million people into rubble, which is what Benjamin Netanyahu...
It wasn't unprovoked, though, was it? Because their sovereign territory was invaded and there was a series of atrocities committed.
It is a war crime to engage in collective punishment.
It's also a terrorist act to invade another country and kill children and old ladies at point-blank range.
Of course, absolutely horrific. And you can't justify war crimes on the basis of other atrocities. It is completely wrong.
I don't think anyone's trying to justify anything. I think that, you know, you get involved in the complexities like you are here and you kind of forget what's actually happening. And it's horrific on both sides. And both sides have attacked each other. I mean, it is who started it, you know, how did it happen? How did the Israelis allow this to happen in the first place? There's lots of questions that need to be answered, but you can't, you know, you can't sit there, James, for the whole show and tell everybody about the legal complexities of this.
I'm not talking about legal complexities.
The point.
I'm talking about basic humanity. If you bomb a Palestinian, do they not die? If you prick them, do they not bleed?
And the same the other way,
they are an occupied people. Because I am saying it is not the same does not mean that I in any way justify attacks on civilians.
So effectively, are you a pacifist? Is that what you're saying, that we shouldn't have military? Because, I mean, how else do you defend yourself when your country's been invaded in this situation?
No, I'm not a pacifist, and I think that people have the right to defend themselves. And I also think, as the UN does, that occupied and colonised people have the right to struggle for self-determination, including by force, within international law. Now, of course, attacking civilians is not within international law.
Yeah, and I should point out the United Nations also saying that nothing can justify the acts of terror, killing, maiming and abduction of civilians that were carried out over the weekend by Hamas. I suppose peace talks in all of this are absolutely key. Is it a generation away now? Are we in a worse position? I mean, everybody we've been speaking to says it's a long way off. Almost it seems intractable as a result of the escalation.
Well, it's not as a result of the escalation. There have been no peace talks since 2014. Israel hasn't been having them. The Israeli government is an annexationist government. The finance minister has said that Palestinians living in the occupied territories have three choices. They can accept subjugation by Israel, they can leave, or they can die. This is not a government that is interested in negotiating peace, which is why we are seeing these eruptions of violence, which is the underlying cause of this, which is what Israel's paper of record, Haaretz, had the guts to say in its editorial yesterday.
OK.
Right, let's talk about fireworks. Carol.
Been a few here this morning. Fireworks, what lack of fireworks. Now, this is James found this story, didn't you? It was another council is cancelling fireworks as well, or Guy Fawkes Night.
Yeah, Guy Fawkes Night. A whole number of them: Nottingham Council, Glasgow, Cardiff, Swansea, Norwich, Manchester.
And that plays into the let's just spoil all the fun while we still pay ourselves massive salaries on these councils. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you don't agree with it, though, do you? You don't agree.
No, I'm massively opposed to it. I think that collective culture and joy and things that we do together are incredibly important, and they're not things that should be cut. Of course, councils have had their budgets cut for all sorts of things, but nevertheless, this is not something that they should do. I mean, we need to have more time, I think, together in the outside world.
But you always bring up the budget cuts and the government cutting councils' funding and all of that. But it's how they spend it, isn't it? It is how they spend it.
No, I agree. And this
they
is a
don't budget themselves, and this is what the people are suffering. The people who, they have two things that they look forward to every year: a few Christmas lights and a bit of a bonfire. And now they can't even have that. and what are they cutting? Let's have a look at their budgets.
Well, I mean, they've been forced to cut all sorts of children's services, mental health support,
Yeah, but look at what they're still spending money on. Look at it. Look at what they still spend. They waste so much money. You know it.
I'm sure there is some waste, but I think that you can have both properly funded social care and properly funded youth centres and decent rubbish collection, all of that.
Proper managers.
And have Guy Fawkes nights and Christmas lights and all other sorts of nice festivities where we come together.
You know, Guy Fawkes night for both of us always sort of ruffles our feathers a bit, doesn't it? I mean, people forget the origins of it all. And, you know, where you were growing up, they would burn effigies of the Pope on November the 5th, wouldn't they? Is that all right?
No? No.
Oh,
no.
just of Guy Fawkes.
No, just Guy Fawkes. But then sometimes when you look at what's going on in Parliament, you think...
But it is interesting that something that, you know, effectively is an anti-Catholic thing has become a national collective act of celebration.
Just a bit of fun. Stop reading so much into everything.
But, I mean, I think you make a good point, though, because... you know, we can change our traditions as well. And yes, of course, it started as a kind of loyalist thing. And even the figure of Guy Fawkes himself, of course, for loyalists in 1605, I think it was, he was, you know, he was a terrible figure. But how he's presented is a bit different. You know, Carol was just saying maybe we need a bit more like him now. So things change over time. But the important point about, you know, you all remember from being a kid and you go on the, you know, you go into the park or you go up the hill and there's a bonfire and fireworks and people are together. And that is a nice sense of community that we should be able to have.
Well, I used to remember putting into your turnip. We had a turnip until we had what are they called?
Catherine Wheels.
Yeah.
Oh.
Until we had that, but yeah. So we had turnips in those days.
What?
I don't know what a turnip is. What's that?
Turnip. A turnip fruit. A turnip vegetable.
Oh, a turnip.
Turnip.
Oh, I thought you said turnip. I thought you were talking about what you have on your trousers. Turnip. Sorry, Eamonn.
Well, should we talk about London rental markets? And we talk about this a lot on the programme, how it's just pushing people out of the city.
How does anybody afford a house?
Yeah, not just in London, frankly. It's and actually not just the big cities. Some of the bigger towns as well have this increase in rent has just been astronomical.
Well, we've had 25 years now where there's been a decoupling of wages and housing costs. So housing costs have gone up a lot. Wages were still going up for the first bit of that, and then wages at the level they've been since 2005. So housing is unaffordable. Part of the problem is that our economy is far too based on financial speculation around housing, and that is part of the problem. The other part is that we sold off social housing, which would help to reduce the cost of housing. So we need to have a really massive expansion, and that is part of what Labour have been talking about at their national convention, which is, you know,
But isn't it the case as well, James? Though in the private sector, the private rental sector. There is a shortage now because landlords are just getting out of it because of changes in the law that are all in favour of the tenants, the taxes and the lack of tax relief, the lack of incentive for private landlords to invest in rental property. So there is a shortage. And whenever there's a shortage, prices go up. So, you know, it's six of one, half dozen the other, isn't it? It's a big problem.
Yeah,
it is a big, especially in London.
We've got a very silly system, and really the way to do it is to have as many rents as possible at a social rent, at an affordable rent, and that means there needs to be a big expansion of building social homes. I mean, Pat McFadden you just had there was talking about homes to buy. Yes, of course, we also want to have homes to buy, but there too many policies tend to focus on that because, you know, that's what we want. We want to own a home, but we need to have a huge expansion of social housing to reduce the cost of homes.
We can all agree on that.
Right. To end with, let's talk about processed foods. Carol.
Processed foods are going to have warnings on, as I said before. It's to stop people from becoming obese, apparently, because they don't want people getting addicted to processed foods, but they make them to be addictive. And so until they take out all those ingredients that stop people from wanting to eat them all the time, it's not going to happen.
Is ice cream addictive?
Well, not for me.
Says foods including crisps, chocolate and ice cream. I'd have thought of crisps, and I think of things like, well, I don't want to name any specific brand, but you know, there are brands that they make that are full of chemicals that you just know.
Sugar is addictive, though, isn't it?
And sugar,
and it's full of sugar, ice cream. It's not for me because I can't eat it because I've got sensitive teeth, unfortunately. But there are a lot of things that are addictive. Sugar is almost worse
but
than
is
fat.
labelling the answer? It
No,
hasn't
of course
really
not.
worked in stopping people from smoking. It doesn't stop us from buying calorific foods. It might stop the conscientious or the well-informed, but the average person going into the shop, well, if it's got a red traffic light
it makes it look like they're doing something about it. And
Better than banning it.
Well, all they want to do is give people this slimming injection that is out now, that suddenly appeared from nowhere. Now everyone's just taking a jab to get thin.
Yeah, I like an ice cream.
I bet you like an ice cream.
I do. I like to think that ice cream, at the end of the day, is a nice way to
Or at the
unwind.
seaside with a flake in it.
Yeah,
I could probably manage one of those.
That'd be okay.
But just be careful you don't get addicted.
Don't get addicted.
An ice cream addiction.
Everything in moderation except moderation, and that's my motto.
What's your view on processed foods and how best we should, as a society, tackle the crisis of obesity and addiction?
So I think blaming the consumer is the wrong way around. I think, sure, things can be labelled and information is fine. Yeah, it is standard, and it's not. And there's a reason it doesn't work. It's not good enough. If you do that, you need to make sure that people have more time, that it's more affordable to eat healthy food, and also that kids are taught about how to cook and prepare food and when they're at school. We don't do any of the things that would change that. And then also, you know, who are you meant to be blaming the consumer, or should you be looking at the producers? If they're putting things that are harmful and addictive in their products, deal with it upstream, deal with it at the site, at the production site, rather than guilting people as if they've done something wrong, when most people don't have that much control over their lives.
Okay.
Very nicely put. Thank you very much indeed, Carol McGiffin and
Caroline.
James Schneider. So, thank you very much.
We should say, if you were standing by for the Foreign Secretary, he is delayed, but he's going to be with us just in a few moments' time, so don't go anywhere. But for now, we say thank you both very much to you two, and we'll see you in just a moment.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one. What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Good to see you. 9 o'clock, Tuesday the 10th of October, coming up to 9 o'clock. It's breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
And here's what we've been covering on breakfast this morning.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that enormous force will be used against Hamas as the bombing of Gaza has continued overnight. 200 targets have been hit. Israel has begun a complete siege of the Gaza Strip.
Police forces across the UK are on high alert with a rise in reports of hate crimes against Jewish communities. Last night, 3 people were arrested during pro-Palestinian protests outside the Israeli embassy in London. This morning, it's been boarded up. Rishi Sunak has restated the UK support for Israel to deal with terrorism.
In other news, Keir Starmer set to deliver his keynote speech later at the Labour Party conference. We're expecting to say Labour needs in power to fix broken Britain. Our political correspondent Catherine Foster is there at the conference.
Yes, Labour in buoyant mood here in Liverpool, talking about a decade in power and building lots of houses and giving Britain its future back. That's the slogan, if, of course, they get elected.
Will they take you with us? Let us know. Greg Dewhurst has your weather.
Hello there, good morning. We've got some heavy rain, Met Office warnings in force across western parts of Scotland today. Brighter skies eventually further south. Find out all the details coming up in the programme.
And you can join in any of the discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com or at GB News.
I want to cross straight away to the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, who's standing by for us this morning. A very good morning to you and welcome to the programme. Would you, first of all, Secretary of State, give us an update on the numbers of British people that you believe to be dead or missing in this escalation since the weekend, and what you are doing to assist their families who'll be waiting desperately for news?
Well, it's very difficult for me to give anything like an accurate assessment of those numbers that you asked for. I completely understand that there'll be many people who are very, very concerned about family, about loved ones who are in Israel. The situation is fast moving and we are liaising very, very closely with the Israeli government. One of the things that makes this situation different to others, like Sudan, for example, is that a very large proportion of the British nationals in Israel will be dual nationals who regard Israel as their permanent home, may even be serving with the Israeli Defense Forces. And so to get any kind of assessment of number, we have to liaise closely with the Israeli government, and we are doing so. But anyone that is concerned should get in contact with the department. The contact details are available on our website, and we will, of course, provide support to any family who requests that of us.
What about dangers, Home Secretary? You know, so many British people want to go there, so many British people are there. What would you say to them?
Well, look, we recognise that because of the holiday, the religious holiday in Israel, a number of people had travelled there for that occasion. We are working closely with Israeli Air Traffic Control, a very, very professional organisation, and the air industry to make sure that commercial flights are still running. And although some have been cancelled, there are still a significant number of commercial flights. So we are saying to people, if they want to leave Israel, if they choose to do so, they should do so via the commercial flights that are available or via the land borders with Egypt and Jordan, which are still open.
Can I ask you about the military assistance and support that you and the Prime Minister have pledged to Israel, and you very much defend their right to defend themselves. What does that support look like militarily? What can the British people be expecting in terms of what we are offering them?
Well, we will continue to work closely with the Israeli government about what they need. Now, obviously, they are a mature, sophisticated democracy. They are a highly capable country. Again, I'm not going to go into details about what they may ask of us in the future, but we are working very closely with them. They know that they have our support. They know that we will continue to work with them to help protect their country and the people of their country, and of course to regain those people who have been kidnapped by the Hamas terrorists.
Home Secretary, a lot to get through, get your head around today. What do you think in terms of what people need? What do people need most of all at this time of the year?
Well, we have to understand that Israel has experienced an unprecedented terrorist atrocity. Hundreds upon hundreds of people killed. Children, women, civilians, old people killed and kidnapped. So the international support is incredibly important to them. It's meaningful for them. Of course, they are absolutely determined to focus their response exclusively on the Hamas terrorists operating out of Gaza, and they are very, very keen that this violence does not spill over either onto the West Bank or to the countries on their borders. So we are working diplomatically with the countries in the region to try and ensure that Hamas don't get what they want, which is to turn this into a wider conflict. Israel is focused exclusively on Hamas and Gaza, and we are supporting them in their response.
Yeah, and Foreign Secretary, I know you have to go. I just really can't let you go without asking about the scenes that we've seen here in London outside the Israeli embassy. A lot of Jewish people very, very concerned about the situation. We've even seen one headmaster talking about children not having to wear their blazers with the Star of David on. What would you like to say about that?
Well, the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, the whole of government take the protection of all people in the UK incredibly seriously, and we know that when there are situations like this in the Middle East, Jewish community here in the UK is targeted. The Home Secretary has written out to police chiefs across the country instructing them to give enhanced reassurance to the Jewish community and enhanced protection to the Jewish community. Everyone in the UK has the right to live in peace and security, particularly the Jewish community at these difficult times, and the government is absolutely determined to make sure that remains the case.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary. Really appreciate that. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. And let's bring you up to date with the latest developments on the Israeli and Hamas conflict. Israel has imposed a complete siege of the Gaza Strip.
Well, that means no power, no food, no gas, everything being closed off. That was very much the message from the Israeli Defence Minister. But in response, Hamas has threatened to start killing civilian hostages if Israel continues to bomb Gaza.
The death toll continues to rise on both sides. About 900 people have died in Israel since Saturday's surprise attack, including 260 people who were killed by Hamas gunmen at the music festival.
Well, since Israel began bombing Gaza in response, almost 690 Palestinians have died. Israel says it has finally sealed the security cordon with Gaza after the breach by Hamas militants on Saturday, after hitting 200 militant targets overnight.
Well, tensions remain high as demonstrations break out across the world. We're receiving footage of pro-Israeli rallies that have been held on the streets of Chile, as well as in Paris, Brussels and Colombia.
And there were also these scenes in the capital last night. Hopefully we can hear some of the crowds as they gathered outside the Israeli embassy, the likes of which we haven't seen, certainly in Kensington. It's unprecedented, frankly, and the Israeli embassy took the protective action of boarding itself up. The Metropolitan Police have reported there have been hate crimes against the Jewish community.
With the Israeli
Well, speaking at the United Synagogue in London, Rishi Sunak said attempts to stir up community tensions will not be tolerated in Britain.
I know that at moments like this, when the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain, not in our country, not in this century.
The leaders of France, Germany, Italy and the UK and the United States have released a joint statement expressing their steadfast and united support of the State of Israel.
Well, last night the Palace of Westminster was lit up in colours of the Israeli flag. More than 10 Britons are believed to be dead or missing in Israel, but the Foreign Secretary in the last few moments has said he won't speculate on the total number of British involved.
The Prime Minister says that the UK is working closely with Israel to locate and bring any British nationals to safety.
It will be an anxious time for many families who have loved ones in the region. It's a quite complex situation on the ground, so we are working very closely with our Israeli counterparts to establish the status of any British nationals on the ground. That work is underway as we speak. But for anyone who does have family or friends in the region, the most important thing for them to do is follow the Foreign Office advice, but also the advice of the Israeli Home Command.
Let's go to former Minister of the Israeli Parliament, Dr. Einat Wilf, who's live for us in Tel Aviv. Dr. Wilf, good morning to you.
To you too.
A sad day today, and it's very difficult to see a way out of this situation.
It is all horrific as we're slowly beginning to get a sense of the magnitude of everything that has transpired on Saturday, the butchery, the executions. These are scenes that we've not seen against Jews since the Holocaust, since the pogroms in Eastern Europe. For years, I have been arguing, explaining that this is the Palestinian vision, this is the goal, and no one wanted to believe. We wanted to think that all of this is in history, that Nazis are people who are long dead and that the British fought and defeated, but that ideology is very much alive here in the region, and it is alive among Palestinians. And Hamas represents the ethos that says that Jews cannot be sovereign in this land.
I don't know if you personally are behind Netanyahu politically, but I'm interested to get your perspective. You know, there's been criticism over the last few days that perhaps some of his legislation, toughening the courts, for example, had taken the eyes off the ball. Oh, I'm being told we've lost our link there to Tel Aviv. I don't know how much you heard of my question. I was just trying to find out, I don't know how much your support is for Netanyahu. He's been criticised for how this was ever able to happen, a big lapse in intelligence. And there is a risk, and I want to know if you accept this as an idea, that he could go too far compensating for that miss in his retaliation. Do you worry, as the United Nations does, about ground forces going in, the humanitarian risk to women, to children, and about the siege which will cut off supplies to people who are innocents in all of this?
First, it's important that people open a map and notice that Gaza has a border with Egypt. This is something that people conveniently forget. somehow making it all about Israel blockading or laying siege. Gaza has a border with Egypt.
Is that border
fellow
open?
Arab country. That is Egypt's responsibility, not
So it's not
ours.
open.
It's sometimes open, but it is Egypt's responsibility, not ours. Gaza has a border with an Arab country, Egypt. Israel, and we've seen the people in Gaza, we've seen what they do when given the chance. You have now protection for Jews in Britain. You have walls. We had walls. The reason that Jews need protection is that this is what Palestinians, this is what our enemies do when given the chance.
Yeah.
And the question is whether you or others plan to give them the chance once more.
Yeah, I suppose my question was, do you think that Netanyahu has a mandate for whatever action he is planning in the next few days? You know, arguably, would the Israeli public expect anything less than the action that he's taking?
The entire state of Israel, it's not about this or that one person, the entire state of Israel and the Jewish people, and I would say the free world, who should all be supporting Zionism as a movement of liberation and standing up of the Jewish people. The whole world has the mandate to ensure that Jewish people will not be massacred in the name of a revivalist Nazi ideology.
And what would you do, Catherine, to make sure that they are not?
We established our state in order so that Jews will not be slaughtered. We protected our state. We established an army. Too many people around the world have indulged the Palestinians, thinking that these are a people who seek nothing more than freedom, or ending the occupation, or improving the lives of people in Gaza. Listen to what they have to say. Look at their actions. Listen to what they did and decided for over a century. They have made it clear their goal has always been for the Jews not to have a state. We need to defeat that ideology, just like you defeated the Nazi ideology. Nothing less than that.
OK, Dr. Einat Wolf, a former member of the Knesset and author of The War of Return. Thanks for your time this morning.
Appreciate it, thank you. In a speech today, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, will promise a decade of national renewal as he promises a generation of new towns to get Britain building again.
Well, under Labour proposals, state-backed companies with compulsory purchase powers would snap up land at capped rates in order to improve affordable home ownership.
So what can we expect? Let's ask our political correspondent Catherine Foster, who's there at conference. They're making all the right soundings, Catherine.
Yes, they are, and they are in really buoyant mood here in Liverpool. It's quite astonishing, the change in Labour fortunes. It's only 3 years that Jeremy Corbin led them to their worst result since 1935. But here now, they believe that they can get a decade in power. They're talking about national renewal. They're saying, let's get Britain's future back. Now, Keir Starmer, they're treading a very fine line. They want a safety-first approach. They don't want to frighten the horses. They don't want to endanger their poll lead. But at the same time, they need to make a positive offering for why voters should vote for them, rather than just, as the polls indicate, being fed up with the Conservatives. So I expect it will be fairly light in terms of policies, but a big offer on housing. We know, of course, there's a massive housing crisis that's likely to go down well. How easy that will be to actually do, of course, is another matter entirely.
Right, hold that thought. We'll be crossing back to you throughout the programme today, here on GB News. Still to come, Mental Health Day. Are you looking for a great way to make your children smile all the time?
Always. We'll be telling you how to do that after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy
energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's World Health Day, Mental Health Day is what it is.
Mouthful.
One day to look after yourself is yoga. And a 98-year-old World War II veteran has been teaching a weekly yoga class for over 40 years.
You see, we need a bit of that. Dorothea Barron, who is in the Wrens, is arguably more supple than probably most of us will ever be.
She shares with us what her secret to a long and healthy life is. Lisa Hartle went to meet her along in one of her yoga classes. Yeah.
And slowly lower your left foot to the floor.
I'm Dorothea Barron, a widow now, and I'm going to be 99 years old on the 25th of this month.
Dorothea, a World War II veteran, has been teaching yoga for over 40 years.
It has, and does keep you supple. And to be able to bend down and pick something up off the floor, or in my case in the garden, pulling up weeds all the time. And of course you have the same friends whom you meet every time, which is very pleasant. Lovely friends.
Some of the women coming to the weekly class, now in Hertfordshire, have been doing so for decades.
It's helped me a great deal mentally, I think, to start with, because you become immersed in the yoga. You can think about nothing else. And I think that's very good for, an hour and a half of that is very good for you.
Oh, keeps you supple. Helps to keep you supple. And, you inevitably in life, you get various injuries, and it helps recovery from that too. A lot of the exercises, I think, overlap with physio. Dorothea is unique. At 99, to be doing what she's doing, she can still do things that I have never been able to do. And she's amazing, just amazing.
So what is Dorothea's secret to having such a long and healthy life?
I love fruit and I love vegetables, and I'm not over-enamoured with meat or fish. I have it occasionally. I suppose share luck in what I like to eat. Oh, I drink alcohol every day, and I love Guinness, and I drink it because of the iron in it. Oh, there's always a bottle of Guinness handy, or a can of Guinness handy for me. And wine. I love wine. I have wine every evening with what I'm eating. 1 glass, possibly 1.5, but never in excess.
I asked Dorothea what she thinks of the way people are treated depending on their age in the UK.
Age doesn't exist. It shouldn't exist. It's just the person you're talking to who exists. It's not an age you're talking to. I talk to kids and animals exactly the same way I talk to people. They're other living beings.
After decades of helping people through yoga, Dorothea says she has no plans of stopping anytime soon. Lisa Hartle, GB News, Hertfordshire.
Wow. What an inspirational woman. Wow. 98 is not young. And, she was putting most of us to shame, and goodness me, and her sort of attitude to life, I love alcohol, I love food, but it was in moderation.
And the advice is surround yourself with pictures of things that'll make you smile. Here's what makes Isabel smile.
Oh, yeah, there's pictures of my family, my kitten, which apparently there is science to show.
There's your family. That's everybody gathered together there. Poppy and William and Liam, and there is Henry the Protector.
Hector the Protector.
Oh, that's a nice picture.
He's a little cutie.
Yeah.
And here's your lot.
There's a lot of us.
At your OBE party.
There's my granddaughter. So the idea is that there's Maggie, one's a statue, one's really her, and there's my brothers.
Band of brothers.
And there's my dad. And that was the car that we went around our holidays with. And there's the queen of everything, my Josephine, my late mother. And so look, put those pictures around you, smile, and be thankful for what you have. Yeah. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 6 o'clock through to 9:30. But up next,
it's Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered.